Mr. Moderator, noting the time is 7:30 p.m.
Thank you very much. A quorum being present, this town meeting is called to order. Please rise for reflections by Mr. Phil Pacino, and following that, we will have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Who's giving the?
Mr. Pacino, Phil Pacino. We're about to unmute you, Phil.
Yeah, he didn't raise his hand. Where is he? I got you. Okay. Mr. Pacino?
Can you hear me okay now?
We can.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay, thank you. Let us pray and bless the work we are to start here tonight. As summer approaches and vaccines increase, our thoughts turn toward getting back to things we did before March of last year. We pray for happier times. We pray for getting back together in person. We pray for the ability to enjoy what we want to do. But we cannot forget other events that have happened recently. Racial and social injustice, unrest continues to happen in our country. We pray for tolerance of all people. It should make no difference who we are, what we are, where we come from, or where we worship. We see violence against Asians and others that should not be tolerated. We pray that all people, no matter who they are, learn about and accept others as ourselves, as we would expect that they would accept us. We see acts of intolerance in the world and even in our own backyard. We should not be about repugnance and exclusion. We must take a stand against intolerance and exclusion and promote greater inclusion and diversity in our town. We must respect human dignity of all people. We pray for our police officers. There are many fine officers who are dedicated to protecting and serving us every day. We pray that they and all potential future officers will not be discouraged by the acts of a few, but instead be proud to know that they are serving and protecting each and every one of us diligently. Saturday was Armenian Genocide Remembrance Day. We pray for the families that lost members during that time. We pray that all sides in that conflict reach a peaceful place of acknowledging each other. We pray for a speedy repair to Reading Town Hall so that we can all meet in person again. But now we turn to the work on hand here. To borrow from the book of Ecclesiastics, there is a time to read. There is a time to listen. There is a time to be confused. There is a time to ask questions. There is a time to speak our thoughts. There is a time to be heard. There is a time to be tolerant of others' expressed thoughts. There is a time to understand all that we are being asked to vote on. There is a time to decide what our position is on what we are being asked to vote on. And finally, a time to vote. We ask for wisdom, knowledge, understanding to do all these actions in the best interest of all. We ask for tolerance and respect for all those who are present here tonight and on all other nights. We ask for this for those whose opinions we disagree with and those who disagree with our own individual opinions. We should build bridges to understanding and not barriers against us. We are here to determine what is best for the town. My friends, and I pause again to remind us all that, as I have on many, many occasions, that we all should consider ourselves friends here. Emerging from this get-together, we should try to navigate all paths and lower all barriers arising from our decisions here and avoid any detours from those paths. And then with continued follow-up effort, there should be good results from the paths we choose to follow. With some patience, some sacrifice, some perseverance, and God's grace, there should be good return to our decisions. In closing, we pray for all citizens to continue to listen to our Board of Health on the pandemic. Even though some may be vaccinated, it is important to continue to listen to the directives forwarded by this group. Praise the Lord. God bless America and the town of Reading. Amen.
Thank you, Mr. Pacino. And now the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, individual, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, next, the oath of office to new members. This is not required by state law, but traditionally we have always sworn in our brand new town meeting members. I would ask that you repeat after me wherever you are, and I would ask that Mr. Crook, who is our assistant town manager, to also take the oath of office, replacing the word town meeting member with assistant moderator. So here comes the oath. I solemnly swear
I solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and impartially
that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge and perform
discharge and perform
all the duties incumbent on me as a town meeting member according to the best of my ability and understanding, agreeably to the Constitution and the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
agreeably to the laws and Commonwealth of Massachusetts,
and to the charter and bylaws of the town of Reading.
and the charter of the town of Reading.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome all our new members and all our returning members. All right, next we will have, the clerk will read the warrant.
To any and all the constables of the town of Reading, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Reading qualified to vote in local elections and town affairs to meet at the following places designated for 8 precincts in said town, namely
Okay, at this point, Ms. Herrick moves that we dispense with the further reading of the warrant with the exception of the officer's return. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand in the Zoom function. And could we lower that? Lower the, okay. And all opposed. And the motion carries. Ms. Jem.
by virtue of this warrant, I, Laura A. Jem, on March 24th, 2021, notified and warned the inhabitants of the town of Reading qualified to vote on town affairs to meet at the place and the time specified by posting attested copies of the town meeting warrant, along with the written request of the town moderator, Alan Folds, dated February 17th, 2021, asking that the town meeting be held by remote participation pursuant to statute 2020, chapter 92, section 8, in the following public places within the town of Reading. Precinct 1, Warren Killam School. Precinct 2, Reading Police Station. Precinct 3, Reading Municipal Light Department. Precinct 4, Joshua Eaton School. Precinct 5, Reading Public Library. Precinct 6, Barrows School. Precinct 7, Birch Meadow. Precinct 8, Wood End School and at Town Hall. The date of the posting being not less than 14 days prior to April 6th, the date set for the town meeting in this warrant. I also caused a posting of this warrant and the town moderator's request for a remote town meeting to be published in the Town of Reading website on March 24th, 2021.
All set. Thank you very much. Well, good evening, fellow Readingites. Before we begin, I do have a few announcements. For the third time, we are meeting remotely, and with a little luck, it might be the last. We realize that this method does not mimic in-person meetings exactly, but we've worked to make it as close as possible. A lot of work has gone into this, not only for tonight, but since last year. It includes all department heads, other employees from the town, particularly the IT department, the schools and the library, elected officials, and all other volunteers. On behalf of the town, I express my deep appreciation to them. And finally, I thank all of you, the town meeting members and other citizens, for your willingness and your patience to make this unusual method of government work and to keep our town running smoothly. One item of particular importance to many of you is the transparency of votes. For the past several weeks, our team has been working on that issue, both together and with our vendor, Zoom. I'm happy to report that as of this week, we now have a method of speeding up roll call votes, if we should have one. They will still take several minutes, but it should work much more efficiently than the method we have used for years that could take more than an hour. I do reiterate that at least 20 members must request a roll call or recorded vote before that can happen. And I ask that we use those sparingly. Here's how I see us proceeding this evening. First, we'll need to take an authorizing vote to allow virtual town meeting to proceed. Then we have just one oral report, the state of the town by the select board chair, and she has assured me it will be in the 5-minute range. All other reports are written. Then we will move on to articles in the warrant. At 8 p.m. though, we need to adjourn the annual meeting and convene a special meeting. Once again, we'll need to take an authorizing vote. When business is complete on the special warrant, we'll adjourn that meeting sine die and return to the annual meeting. The select board, or the town manager through the select board has asked that we move the substance of Article 8 to the start of the reconvened meeting. And then after that, the select board has asked that Article 19 be taken up to change the order. To change that, it only takes a simple majority. And it's, at least in the case of Article 8, we might already be there. We'll continue tonight as far as we can, and then we'll adjourn to Thursday evening. As it is much easier to complete work on the budget during one session, the body will be asked on Thursday night to take Article 16, the operating budget, out of order and begin Thursday working on that so we can complete it in one night. Following completion of the budget, we'll take up the warrant articles wherever we left off and continue the meeting until completed, next Monday or possibly next Thursday. Now, just a quick overview of the process that we've been through a few times now. If you wish to speak, use the hand raising option on Zoom and you will be called on in the order that your hands were raised. You will be asked to unmute yourself. We will try to give everyone a first chance to speak before repeating. If you wish to offer a point of order, use the chat option. If an amendment is offered, discussion will switch to the amendment until we vote on it, just like at a live town meeting. Then we'll return to the main motion. When we are ready to vote, a poll will appear on your screen and you have 30 seconds or so to vote. The vote will be declared, will be announced by the town clerk and declared by the moderator, and we move on to the next article. And finally, I just want to reiterate, remember, this is we try to keep things civil. We are here to discuss issues and not personalities. First up, before we begin the business, Mr. Bill Brown has asked for a moment of personal privilege. Mr. Brown, can we unmute Mr. Brown? There you go.
Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown? All right.
He's not muted.
He's not muted. Okay, we may have to come back to him. All right, well, let's get into the business of the town meeting. Ms. Herrick moves that the Reading Town Meeting commence business at this meeting remotely using the video conferencing platform selected by the moderator. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay. Okay, lower the hands and we will ask for the no votes. Right, okay, and the no votes? Okay, and I will ask Mr. Crook, the assistant moderator, what the vote is in the pack. Mr. Crook, can you hear me?
No.
Can you hear Mr. Crook?
I heard him briefly. Can you repeat that, Mr. Crook?
1 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. I heard 1 yes, 0 no.
Okay, the motion carries. Now, business under Article 2. Ms. Herrick moves we lay the subject of Article 2 on the table. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and if we can lower those. And those opposed. Okay, and at the pack,
1 yes.
One.
0 no.
okay, and the motion carries. Substance Article 2 is laid on the table. Motion on Article 3, Ms. Herrick.
Mr. Moderator,
Oh.
I have no idea what the vote was for the last motion.
It was just a hand count. I have
I
recorded.
still, I need the numbers to record
Okay.
them.
Okay, 149 to 3.
Does that include the pack?
Yes.
Can you let me do the number, like we're supposed to, or do you want me to
Okay,
just go
okay.
home?
Well, the reason I was doing that was they were just hand votes, but I'll let you take that. Okay. Motion on, excuse me, business under Article 3, Ms. Herrick, the town, state of the town.
Okay. Here we go. Okay. Mr. Moderator, we have a point of order in the chat.
And that point of order is,
See Teresa Wiggins.
yes, that was,
All right.
so, excuse me, if I got that backwards,
Mhm.
You see the numbers for the
Mhm. Yeah, but it's going on, and yeah.
There's also a point of order from Mr. Ensminger.
all right, hold on a second. Oh, I just found it. Sorry about that. Okay, I actually reversed the order of that. You're absolutely right. I will have to back up. I will ask that, Ms. Herrick moves that we take Article 2 from the table. All in favor, please raise your hand. Laura, can you tell me when you're all set with each count?
Go ahead.
Okay, and in the pack?
1 yes. 0 no.
Okay, and now those
So-
opposed?
We have, okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so we have 145 yes and 11 no.
And in the pack, do we have any no's in the
That
pack?
includes the
Oh,
pack.
that includes the pack. Okay, good. Okay, so the motion carries, reports is back before the body. That was my mistake. I apologize. Now, Ms. Herrick, state of the town?
Yes.
Do we have Ms. Herrick unmuted?
I've asked Ms. Herrick to unmute.
Okay, good.
Okay, can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
yes, we can. Great.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Moderator and town meeting members. The last 13 months will define a generation. Tonight, I wanted to take a moment and acknowledge what we have all been through together. To pause and remember the difficult loss of our neighbors, family, and loved ones to COVID-19. Let us give a moment of silence to those who are no longer with us, but will forever remain in our hearts. It is important as we begin our work tonight to understand that we are not done with this pandemic. Many of us are making progress toward becoming fully vaccinated. However, new variants are circulating, and as we all know, our lives are not yet back to normal. In acknowledging this reality, we can also take a deep breath and understand that the stress and worry of the last year is still here, affecting all of us. I ask that during this annual town meeting, we make an extra effort to be kind to each other during animated discussions. We are first and foremost neighbors, and I know that as members of this community, we all have much more in common than we do differences between us. While I believe the darkest days of this public health crisis are behind us, I also echo outgoing Select Board Chair Mark Doxer that calm discussion is critical and needed in a double dose for this town meeting and the coming months. On a more positive note, at this time, I'd also like to take an opportunity to recognize and sincerely thank a long-term town meeting member who has just retired after at least 25 years of service. This member was our friend and neighbor, Russell Graham. In addition to being a town meeting member, well known for his calm and thoughtful demeanor, Russ also served as Reading Select Board member and chair. His former Select Board colleague, Daniel Ensminger, noted that he also served on the Finance Committee and became very much involved in the Library Foundation after that. Not to be overlooked, almost 20 years ago, Russ chaired the School Building Committee, which resulted in a comprehensive renovation and construction of 3 schools, Reading, Memorial High School, Barrows, and Wood End. We would not be the community we are today if not for his persistent, tireless, and selfless service to the town. On behalf of all of us on this call tonight, I would like to thank Russ for his many, many years of leadership and service as a town meeting member. I'd also like to thank our town staff, school administrators, and teachers for their hard work and dedication this year, a truly heroic feat. My proudest moments this year involved the many volunteers and staff that distributed masks to residents, made calls to the homebound, conducted countless birthday parades, supported the food pantry with extra deliveries and donations, and provided a record number of school meals. I marveled at the kindness of community members trading tips on where to find extra toilet paper, flour, and hand sanitizer. Upon rediscovering our many trails and recreation areas, the vaccination scheduling assistance to be had online and between neighbors, the kids and adults walking and riding bicycles around town in numbers not seen in years. And last but not least, the peaceful outdoor gatherings and marches that were held around town in response to the senseless acts of violence against Black, Asian, and other Americans. As I sit here tonight, I look forward optimistically to the future. I am grateful that vaccinations are becoming widely available. In the not too distant future, I see us gathering safely together with friends and family, indoors and out. I see our staff and volunteers implementing the kinds of programs and policies that will make Reading the envy of other communities, as well as a leader in the critical areas such as environmental sustainability and social justice. All of these things make me grateful and proud to be a member of the Reading community. Thank you all for your contributions in making this the town and home we all know and love. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you. Mr. Doxer moves that we place Article 2 back on the table. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and all those opposed? Okay, and the vote at the PAC?
1 yes, 0 no.
The town clerk?
The vote being 141 yes and 4 no.
So the motion carries. I should point out when I say the PAC, I'm using shorthand. It's the Performing Arts Center where we normally meet. Business under Article 4, amending the capital improvement program. Mr. LaLacheur?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I think you have a point of order in the chat.
Oh, I do. Did I skip Article 3 again? I did. It's probably your point of order. I think we have so many pieces of paper here. Hold on a second. 141 to 1. Okay, traditionally, we place Article 3 on the table so we can take it up at the end of the meeting. Ms. Herrick moves that we place the substance of Article 3 on the table. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and lower the hands. And all those opposed?
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
the point of order is related to an instructional motion
Okay.
when you're done with this vote.
Sure. Okay.
We got it.
Got it. And at the PAC, the vote? Mr. Crook?
Back, 1 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. Is it Ms. Wiggins? Ms. Wiggins, point of order?
Ms. Wiggins, please raise your hand so I can call on you. Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Wiggins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I am wondering where the instructional motion that was meant for the beginning of the meeting will come in.
Well, we take them at the end. I believe the one that was meant for the beginning probably has been handled. Do you not agree with that?
I agree, but as I mentioned during the practice, I checked in that we could still take it, and I thought that we had reached agreement on that, that you said, yes, we could
Oh,
do that
yeah.
at the beginning.
Oh, I didn't see a need for it at the beginning because it couldn't apply to this meeting anyway. That's the only reason I did that. I didn't realize that's what you thought I was agreeing to.
Okay.
But it will be on the list, no question about it.
Okay, and then it'll apply
Yes.
future.
Well,
Okay.
Well, yes, they're non-binding, but it will direct whatever you're asking to be directed. Do you understand that? Did I explain that right?
I
Instructional
guess so,
motions,
but what
yeah.
I'm asking is about this town meeting.
This, do you think it's necessary? You think it needs to be at the beginning of this meeting? Is that what you're asking?
It's how it's written and how it was submitted, and I thought what we had agreed upon, but I obviously misunderstood, but
Either that or I misunderstood you, but traditionally we take them up at the end. Since we felt like that particular issue was set, it could go with the rest of them at the time. But if you disagree, I'll ask the town meeting if they want to take Article 3 back off the table.
I would prefer just to have it kind of done because it talks about this meeting and any others until the other instructional motion is voted on.
Okay, then we will. So are you moving that we take Article 3 from the table?
Or we can do it after Article 3.
Actually, we're getting very close to the point where we're going to have to break for the special meeting anyway.
Okay.
All right, we'll come back to that after the special meeting is dispensed with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are 1 minute away from calling the special meeting to order. Mr. Lalash, I asked you on Article 4, but we're going to have to wait on that because the time has come for the special meeting, or at least we're within a few seconds of it here.
So, Mr. Moderator, for Article 3 to be put on the table, it's 1:45 to 10.
1:45 to 10. Okay.
Mr. Moderator, Mr. Coco and Mr. Simons have raised their hands again. Nope.
No.
Yep.
Okay. Do we have what is your questions?
Mr. Simmons? What's your question?
I have no question.
Your hand's raised.
Right? It says lower here.
Yeah, because your hand's raised. If you hit lower, it'll go down. There we go. Perfection.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
It keeps
Okay.
going up.
Okay. Okay. At this point, Ms. Herrick moves that we adjourn the annual town meeting until after the special town meeting is completed. All in favor, please raise your hand. We have a second on that, by the way. Okay, and lower it, and all those opposed? Oh, we have to lower them first.
Yep.
All right, let's see.
And the pack?
And in the pack? Do we get the pack?
1 yes, 0 no.
Thank you.
So the vote being 145 to 4.
145 to 4. The annual meeting is adjourned until after the special meeting. The quorum being present, this special town meeting is now called to order. The clerk will read the warrant.
To any of the constables of the town of Reading, greetings. In the name of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you are hereby required to notify and warn the inhabitants of the town of Reading qualified to vote in the local elections and town affairs to meet in accordance with chapter 92, the acts of 2020, and through the Zoom platform on Monday, the 26th of April, 2021. At 8 o'clock in the evening, at which time the place and the following articles are to be acted upon and determined exclusively by town meeting members in accordance with the provisions of the Reading Home Rule Charter. Members of the public may access and witness the deliberations and actions taken at the special town meeting in the following manner: RCTV Facebook or on local public access television. The town meeting members and the town officials shall receive a link to join the Zoom video conferencing platform to participate in the special town meeting. Non-town meeting members are the registered voters residing in the town who wish to participate in the special town meeting must submit a request to participate to the town clerk not less than 48 hours in advance of the special town meeting. And when submitting this request, non-town meeting members who wish to make a comment, ask a question, or otherwise address town meeting should contact town clerk Laura Gem with the following information: first and last name, street address, phone number, email address, and articles he or she would like to speak to, and once verified shall receive follow-up information with specific participation instructions for the meeting. If on April 26, 2021, the town meeting elects not to hold the special town meeting remotely, then the town meeting will adjourn in the Reading Memorial High School Performing Arts Center, 62 Oakland Road, Reading, on Thursday, April 29th, 2021 at 8 o'clock in the evening.
Okay, Ms. Herrick moves that we dispense with the further reading of the warrant except for the officer's return. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and we'll lower those, and all those opposed. All set? Okay, and at the pack?
1 yes, 0 no.
So the vote being 148 to 7.
Okay, the motion carries. We will now commence with the special town meeting. Business under Article 1. Ms. Herrick moves that we lay the subject matter of Article 1 on the table. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll lower those. And all those opposed? And the pack vote?
Yes, 0 no.
158 to 2.
So the motion carries. Motion under Article 1, the subject matter of Article 1 is laid on the table. Motion under Article 2, move to table the subject matter by Ms. Herrick. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay.
All right, for the hands, all those opposed.
Okay.
Okay, and at the PAC?
0 yes, 0 no.
So 146 to 8.
And the motion carries. The subject matter of Article 2 is laid on the table. Move to Article 3. Let's see, who is actually making that motion here? 3, okay, the motion is before you in your packet. Mr. LaLacheur?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Town meeting members, let me share my screen. For anyone that might be new to town meeting, previously the moderator has dispensed with reading of the motions, but as motions and as edits are suggested on other articles, I'll be happy to display those and show them to you. Here is the article that you have in front of you on Article 3, the motion rather. 2 quick slides. One is past history and one is where we are now in the future. In the early 2010s, a cell tower came up as one of the few revenue ideas pre-override from a financial forum that was attended by about 50 or 60 people. In FY17, this body approved $100,000 for preliminary cell tower design, and at annual town meeting in 2018 approved $400,000 to build a permanent cell tower, not right away, but out in FY20. In 2018, in the summer, some neighbors attended a then Board of Selectmen meeting and objected. In 2018, not sure what that was. 2018, I requested the town meeting remove the $400,000 authorization, but we needed to retain $100,000 to relocate town equipment. And the carriers were asked to build a temporary structure. A year ago, last winter, so like 14, 15 months ago, the cell carriers were non-responsive to an RFP, that should be a P, for the temporary tower. They were not interested and they were not in the business of building temporary towers, they said. 2020, the select board received an update and were asked about next steps. And late last fall, early last winter, the board voted to allow the town to build a temporary tower for its equipment, but not to house the equipment for the cell carriers. And that funding request would then have needed to be seen at this body. 2021, later, the select board recently voted to allow the carriers to build a temporary structure as they had no other plan that would keep cell coverage in significant parts of Reading. So that brings us up to today. Earlier this month, the town has issued an RFP to request bidders once again to build a temporary structure for cell equipment, and that would include housing the town's equipment on a temporary structure. And that's the same thing we did 15 months ago. The special town meeting today is asked to authorize ground leases to allow this. If the RFP 15 months ago had been successful a year ago at town meeting, we would have asked this question, but we weren't able to ask it until now. Next month, around the middle of May, the town will issue an invitation to bid in order for us to buy a new water tank. So the first part is an RFP to build a temporary structure. The second is to buy a water tank, and then the third and last part is to issue an RFP to allow the carriers placement on the new water tank. Clearly, the carriers have a strong interest before they want to build a temporary structure. They want to know that they're going to be welcome back on the new water tank. I would be remiss in not adding that in November 2021, most likely, at a subsequent town meeting, the town staff will be back to a request of additional funding for the water tank. We're short about $500,000, but we don't really know the exact number because the invitation to bid has not been issued. And then it's possible that the project may grow. There's been some discussion of some remediation work done for the neighborhood. So it's possible we may see a request for additional funding for such things as parks or plantings and such. So again, the request in front of town meeting is to authorize ground leases so that the select board can effectively let the cell tower, temporary cell tower, be built by the carriers. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Moderator, I see Mr. Ensminger.
Okay, ask Mr. Ensminger to unmute.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. question to Bob, first of all. It's a two-part question. Bob, how confident are you that this need only be 30 months in duration?
Mr. Moderator,
Mr.
Um,
LaLachère?
Dan, there's a chance it could just be one construction season, which would require 18 months, but just to be safe, we added a second construction season. So the 30 months, as far as we can tell, should be very safe.
Thank you. Am I still on, Mr. Moderator?
Yes, you are.
Okay, a question to the head of dispatch or either chief. Could you please comment on the importance of this temporary tower to maintaining our dispatch services during the period of construction?
Do we have one of those two people on?
If we don't, I can certainly speak for them. It's vital. The select board were shown a coverage map earlier this spring by the cell carriers, and that would include equipment that the town uses. We'd really be out of luck for a lot of 911 coverage in the town and a lot of radio coverage, I should say cell phone coverage for the police and the fire. So it's critically important that the cell tower temporarily be built and that we not lose any service. And just to be clear with what we'll actually do, we have old equipment on the water tank. As part of the temporary cell tower, we'll either buy new equipment for then or new equipment when it goes back on the water tank. We haven't decided yet. But it's absolutely vital that no interruption to service happen.
Mr. Moderator, I see Fire Chief Burns. with
Fire
his
Chief
hand.
Burns?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The radio equipment is, the location of the water tower is critical to our emergency communications for both fire and police. It's also used by the school department as well. So that gives us the height that we need and also the coverage throughout the community. So if we lose that, there'll be a lot of dead spaces for us. And as the town manager said, it's also critical to us for cell phone coverage. We do use that during emergencies. The police more than fire, but fire does use it. And it's also important for our computer access when we're out and about. And it's also important for the residents, as a lot of people are not using landlines anymore. A lot of 911 calls come in via cell phones. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Okay. Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jonathan Barnes, Precinct 5. I just have a question for a clarification of Bob. The information on your slide this evening is a little bit at variance with what I understood in the warrant booklet, where in the booklet it indicated that after the cell carriers initially were non-responsive and the select board followed with their proposal, the warrant booklet indicated that the cell carriers came in, made the presentation that you referenced, but then it also suggested that they offered at that time to build a temporary structure and to allow the town's emergency equipment on it. I presume that that's correct. I just want to clarify that. And if it is, my question is, was that just a verbal acknowledgement and offer, or was it somehow committed in writing at that time? Thank you.
Bill LaLachère?
Sure, Mr. Moderator. Yeah, Jonathan, that is correct. They did make that offer. They changed from being non-responsive, I guess, to being highly responsive. It was a promise made verbally. They've not committed to anything in writing, but they will respond to the RFP, and we understand that they will follow through.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. Robinson.
Mr. Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Chuck Robinson, Precinct 4. I guess I had a similar question to Mr. Barnes. So I guess now I'm seeing that you answered the first part of my question, that they came back and they are responsive. Was there some agreement made with them that they get the permanent structure? Is that why they've agreed now to do the temporary structure, or what's or you may have hit it and I missed it, Bob.
Mr. LaLaShure.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. No, there isn't, Chuck, but that's clearly their keen interest. And that's the second RFP that will go out in June that will invite carriers back on a new water tank. So to some degree, they're taking it on faith, but they also have some time to respond to the first bid. Every single carrier absolutely wanted to know that they were welcome back before they would agree to build this temporary tower. So the timing should work out that they should have that assurance that there is an RFP issued. However, they can't know, since we have to be competitive, they can't know that they will be selected by the town for an RFP. You know, we just don't know, you know, who might respond to an RFP. If it's just the vendors who are on now and one that's not that would like to be, then that's simple, but you could never tell who might respond to an RFP.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion?
We have Mr. Mon.
Mr. Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4. I have two questions. One, what will this temporary tower look like? What will its height be in comparison to the existing water tower? And then I have another question after that one's answered.
Mr. LaLaShure.
Okay, well, again, the article is for leases, so if the moderator would like me to answer, the supposition is ballast poles were the latest proposal, but quite honestly, until they respond to the RFP, we can't be sure.
Is it safe to say that the height will be comparable to the existing water tower or the equipment on the existing water tower?
Jamie, it'll go higher than that for coverage. I want to say 170 feet instead of 140 something. So not a huge amount higher. There had been discussion of 200 to 250 in other iterations. So it's going to have to be higher for coverage, but not significantly higher.
And my final question, what if, as last time, nobody responds to the RFP? Will we leave the existing emergency equipment on the water tower and not take it down, or what will we do if there are no responses?
I think that I'll have to lead town staff and we'll just paint the damn thing ourselves. The water tank is in desperate shape. It needs to either be painted or replaced. So, you know, I don't know, Jamie, if they don't bid again, then we've got a problem. But, you know, the real problem here is the water tank. Not the cell coverage, with all due respect, much as public safety needs that. We need a new water tank, and we just have to do that within the next couple of years, or the DEP is going to come down on us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, keep in mind again, we're working on the leases for the cell tower. Any further discussion?
Mr. Doxer.
Mr. Doxer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Good evening, town meeting members. Mark Doxer, Precinct 1 and member of the Select Board. I just wanted folks to know, as it relates to these leases, the town basically announced to the cell carriers that their leases would be terminating and that they would no longer be able to have coverage in town, which they obviously did not want to have. And in fact, they made a presentation to the board sharing quite the opposite information, that it was critical that they maintain service in town and that they wanted to do this. The reason for doing this RFP for leases is that that has been determined by town council to be the right approach to allow that to take place. So these carriers, and it was AT&T and Sprint who came in and suggested that they are very keen on doing this for us. I'll put that into quotes, but to make sure that we have the coverage that we need for public safety. And also because at this point, many people as residents and as businesses rely on cell phone coverage, and we can't have a situation where we don't have that coverage. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Mr. Finch.
Yeah, hi, Will Finch, Precinct 8. In past presentations about this proposal, I recall that it was the town's desire to not have cell phone antennas on the water tower because it was a maintenance issue, and they preferred a separate tower just for cell phones. I'm wondering what the town's position is now on this issue? Are they okay with having these antennas on the tank? Thank you.
Mr. Lelisher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. With the current type of tank we have, it required painting every 15 years, and we generally got around to it every 20 years or so. And that was a real burden in terms of taking the equipment off and putting it back on. The new tank that we've proposed and the town meeting has previously provided funds for is a one and done. It's a water tank that should last 50 to 80 years. It does not need any maintenance or painting. So the equipment can go up once and stay there. In a perfect world, the town would prefer there was no equipment on the water tank. But certainly this is far better than any other alternative we realistically have now. And it is substantially better than the current situation where vendors and town staff need to go up and remove equipment every 15 to 20 years.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Mr. Herrick.
Mr. Herrick.
Yeah, Steve Herrick, Precinct 8. Just so I and the rest of the town meeting understands, well, what we're proposing to do here is we're putting out to lease ground space, but we have multiple vendors, Verizon, AT&T, whomever. Who would actually be building the tower? Do these guys, do they form some kind of corporation to build a tower? Do we build the tower? Just so we all understand, how would that work actually? We're talking about leasing space that will allow them to do this on a temporary basis. But since there are multiple entities involved here, can we, how do we think about who we're actually leasing to?
Mr. Lelisher.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Steve, we don't know. It's up to the vendors to solve that problem. Through conversations, historically, one of them has always indicated they would prefer to be the lead and build such a tower, but until they respond to the RFP, we can't know for sure. And I mentioned earlier that, you know, we can't know everything about the RFP. There's a slight chance, at least, that an independent third party, if you will, middleman could come in and win the bid and then, you know, lease the thing back to the cell carrier. So the real answer is we don't know who we're leasing to until the results of the RFP are in.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, are we ready for the vote? All right, we're going to call for a poll on this, which should appear on your screen. That's actually, it says Article 16, but it's really Article 3 of the special town meeting. And can we have the vote in the pack?
1 yes, 0 no.
The vote being 181 to 2.
181 to 2, the motion carries. That concludes business under the special town meeting. Ms. Herrick moves that we adjourn the special town meeting sine die. There's a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Okay.
Okay, lower the hands and we'll check the no votes. All those opposed to adjourning this meeting? And do we have a vote in the pack?
1 yes, 0 no.
The vote being 162 to 7.
Vote being 162 to 7, this special town meeting stands adjourned, sine die. A quorum being present, the annual town meeting is reconvened. Okay, the first business, Ms. Wigan has asked that we take Article 3 from the table. Let me get my notes here before we do that. Okay, is there a second? Second. All those in favor of taking Article 3 from the table, please raise your hand. And in the pack?
1 yes, 0 no.
All right, I'll set that. All that we,
So,
we need.
10 I'm
Okay.
sorry?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So it's 104 to 1.
104 to 1, okay. So Article 3 is now taken from the table for an instructional motion. Ms. Wigan? Do we have a point of
Okay, yep.
order?
Yep.
No?
I'm muting her.
Oh, okay, good enough.
Thank you,
Go ahead.
Mr. Moderator. Teresa Wiggins, Precinct 8. Thank you for allowing this instructional motion towards the beginning of this meeting. It reads, since voting protocol for remote meetings is not currently reflected in Rule 13 of the general bylaws, the town moderator adopt the following measure at the beginning of the 2021 annual town meeting. In order to make voting by roll call a more efficient process, town meeting roll call votes will be captured electronically for this remote 2021 annual town meeting and any other remote town meetings until remote voting protocol is reflected in the general bylaws. The town moderator may determine how this can best be achieved, for example, by utilizing existing Zoom capabilities. And I'd just like to say, if this pandemic has taught us one thing, it is that none of us were prepared for a pandemic. Systems across our globe have had to adjust, and town meeting is no exception. Understandably, we did not have a protocol in place in our town charter, bylaws, or rules to conduct a virtual town meeting. Thanks to the ingenuity and creativity of our town moderator, town clerk, and other town staff, we are now in our 3rd virtual town meeting, which thankfully keeps us safe and able to follow CDC guidelines. An unintended result, however, is that much of our beloved process of representative town meeting has now become anonymous. The current interpretation of the bylaws as it applies to virtual meetings is such that anonymity will largely remain. One important feature of bylaw section 2.12 Rule 13 does allow us to take a roll call vote. And while it's an essential component of Rule 13, it can be a tedious process. Over Zoom, it is even more tedious as each person needs to unmute as they are called. This instructional motion seeks to make roll calls more efficient by dramatically reducing the amount of time a roll call will take. Because the process will become more efficient, roll call will feel more accessible as an option for voting. I'd ask you to please consider voting yes on this instructional motion to improve the efficiency of virtual roll call voting. Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Moderator, Ms. O'Neill.
Ms. O'Neill?
Thank you, Mary Ellen O'Neill, Precinct 4. I will definitely support this. I feel a roll call vote, which may in past town meetings be considered a little unfriendly in virtual town meetings, is a way of providing transparency. So I'm very much supportive of this instructional motion and thank Ms. Wiggins for bringing it forward.
Further discussion?
Mr. Moderator, we have a point of order in the chat asking if this is something that can be achieved through an instructional motion.
Instructional motions are advisory only. There's nothing mandatory about them. As moderator, I will say we have worked on this issue, and I think we've come up with at least an acceptable alternative. It will be used if we have a roll call vote at this meeting. It will be used later.
Okay, we have further questions from Mr. Moran.
Mr. Moran.
While I certainly don't want to see lots of roll call votes, which would delay us getting through the warrant, I am a little concerned that maybe some people will use the record of votes to, in the future, like when we're all up for re-election, to, come up with a list of, people who are not voting for, given areas, and so that people will be, like on a hit list or something. So I'm just a little worried about that. Thank you.
Okay, I will point out that the last instruction, point of order that was made by Patrick O'Sullivan, asking if this can be achieved through an instructional motion. Further discussion?
We have Linda Doxer.
Okay, Ms. Doxer. Oh,
nope, I lost her. Linda, go ahead and raise your hand again. There you are. Thank you. And go ahead.
Hi, I just wanted that Linda Snow Doxer, Beaver Road Precinct 1. First of all, thank you to our staff, administration, town volunteers for everything you've done to keep us safe. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify this, that this instructional motion is not asking that every vote is a roll call vote. It is only making those votes that have the 20 people voting to have it a roll call. Only then will it be a roll call vote. It's not making all votes a roll call vote. I just wanted you to confirm that.
As moderator, that is the way I am interpreting it. If Ms. Wiggin has a different view of her motion, she should raise her hand. Ms. Wiggin? Wiggins?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Teresa Wiggins, Precinct 8. That is how I attempted to write it, which is to have roll call votes be electronically recorded. And that, to another commenter's point earlier, that's no different. Roll call votes are recorded, and as our constituents should know how we're voting. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Mr. Weld.
Mr. Weld.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Carl Weld, Precinct 7. I'm not sure everyone was on during the test session when you explained how Zoom has adapted to allow this type of thing to happen. Maybe you could repeat those remarks and offer some clarification on that.
I will certainly do that. I think I made it in my opening remarks, but I would have no problem doing it again. Let's see if I can find them. All right. We have the staff and volunteers have been working together with our vendor Zoom, and I reported as of this week, we now have a method of speeding up roll calls. They'll still take several minutes, but it should work more efficiently than the method we've used for years. That sometimes could take more than an hour. I do reiterate that we need 20 members to request a roll call. The way it will work is if we have the 20, the roll call will be called, the vote will be recorded. I, as moderator, will then read off the yeses and nos by member, and then the report will be mailed as soon as we can, hopefully during this meeting, to all town meeting members, and then later put on the town website. That's the plan we have for this meeting.
Mr. Moderator, I'd like to clarify that it'll be put on the town website as part of the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you hear that? They'll be part of the minutes on the website, but they will be emailed out.
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
So does that make this instructional motion moot?
Yes, to be fair, she put this in before we were able to do that. But yeah, it somewhat, I guess it does, but that's up to you. That's up to town meeting to decide.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further discussion.
Nancy Doctor.
Ms. Doctor.
Nancy Doctor, Precinct 1. I guess, have the thought that any elected town meeting member, our roll call votes should not be any different than our state reps or our senators. And I thank Ms. Wiggins for this instructional motion, and I plan on supporting it. Thank you.
Further discussion.
Mr. Vaughn.
Mr. Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4. Just to clarify, so if there is a roll call vote called for and approved, we'll vote just like we do if there isn't a roll call, the difference being that the moderator will then read the name of every member that voted and how they voted. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
This, just to let you, again, to reiterate, this did not exist a couple of weeks ago, this method.
Okay.
Further discussion?
Alicia Williams.
Ms. Williams.
Hi there. I apologize for being confused, but thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm hearing two different things. What Ms. Linda Snowdoxer just said, my interpretation of what she said is that the 20 people who put in for the roll call vote, I feel like she undid what you said. So I apologize, and I'm getting text messages. People are not following along, and I'm happy to fall on the sword and explain that people don't really understand what a roll call vote is if they're new to town meeting.
Okay, good point. Okay, in a normal town meeting, live town meeting, I should say, there are three ways of voting. The fallback, the default is we should have a show of hands. It's not recorded other than the final vote, 150 to 10 or whatever. If the moderator or 7 people request it, we have a standing count. So we have an exact number. Again, it's not recorded. But if 20 town meeting members request a roll call vote, then we, in a normal town meeting, we call on every member individually, record that person's vote individually. That's very time consuming, as you may remember from the fall. So we have found a way to speed it up this year. But again, it'll only be used if 20 members request it. At that point, instead of being called individually, we will vote using the polling function, and then the moderator will read the names as they have voted. Does that answer your question?
I already.
You
yeah.
muted it. Okay.
Yeah.
Further discussion.
Ms. Sanfie.
Ms. Sanfie.
Hi, this is Michelle Sanfie, Precinct 6. I just wanted to make sure I understood it. So where I am a representative of Precinct 6 and there's a roll call vote, it would be captured in the minutes. So anybody in my precinct that wanted to look up and see how I had voted on various roll call votes would be able to have access to that, so they would know how I was representing them.
Correct. And I will point
Excellent.
out, this is the way it has always been. It's just that in this new world, it's a little bit tougher to do it.
Everything is, yes. Thank you
Yes.
so much, Mr.
Yeah.
Moderator. Okay, I definitely support this. I would like people to know how I'm representing them. Thank you.
Further discussion.
Moment. We have Ms. Perry.
Ms. Perry.
Hi, Carrie Perry, Precinct 6. I had a question. I understand how it will work once the roll call vote is taken, showing who voted which way. However, for the nomination of the roll call vote itself, will there be clarity and transparency on the 20 people voting for that?
I'm not sure how we could do that. I would ask for hands, and we would, I would look to see if we have at least 20. Again, it would be just like a regular town, a live town meeting. We wouldn't record those 20. We would just see that there were at least 20.
Okay.
Thank you. Further discussion.
Mr. Coulter.
Mr. Coulter.
Hi, Bob Coulter, Precinct 6. Thank you. Is there any way that we could possibly introduce an increase instead of just 20 individuals, say, knowing how many people are attending, a percentage that says, if at least 40% or, just 20 individuals seems like a very small number to ask for a roll call vote.
That would require a charter change. I do believe we have an
Charter
instructional
change,
motion
okay.
asking that the town look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion.
Mr. Ventura.
Mr. Ventura.
Yeah, to I believe Ms. Perry's point regarding the 20 votes, why couldn't that be done in a roll call vote fashion? From my experience in the fall, that roll call vote was used to intimidate some certain people. It was very late to delay it so people would go to bed. Half the town meeting went to bed at that point. And during the most recent campaign, some of those who voted a certain way on a subject matter were branded by outside supporters of a certain campaign, where they were targeted as people who did not condemn racism, which could not have been further from the truth. As we'll probably have further discussion in the warrants down the way. So I think it's imperative to know those 20 that are calling for the roll call vote, because in my opinion, it was used as an intimidation factor.
Well, we are trying to mimic a regular town meeting, and that would not be the case. This is not a new format. We've always had roll call votes. So as near as we can, we will follow the charter the way we've always done things, which means that those 20 are not recorded.
Mr. Moderator, you have a point of personal privilege from Angela Binda and a point of order from Mr. Mon.
Okay, we'll take the point of order first. Mr. Mon?
Okay, Mr. Mon, please raise your hand so I can call on you. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4. My point of order is that the last comment was of a personal nature, in my opinion, and also it had nothing to do with the instructional motion on the floor, which was to allow electronic recording of votes, and nothing to do with the comment that the commenter made.
Okay, point taken. Point of personal privilege by, I forgot who you said it was.
Ms. Binda?
Ms. Binda, I'm sorry.
Ms. Binda, please raise your hand. Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Mr. Mon stated what I was going to state, that personal attacks should not be allowed on the floor of town meeting. Thank you.
Further discussion.
We have Audra Cashin.
Ms. Cashin?
Hi there. I'm new to town meeting, so I'm not really sure if I'm on the right track here, but someone was asking why we wouldn't know what 20 people were asking for the roll call. And you were saying that we just do a show of hands, and the typical meeting, that's what it is. We just see they just raise their hands.
Correct.
And we wanted to keep this as close to a regular meeting, but in a regular town meeting, can't all the members see the hands? And that's, I guess, what I was wondering, like, will we be able to see the hands in this virtual world?
No. Again, I know it's not perfect, and I know it's something you're losing a little bit because of the virtual nature of it. But no, that's the closest we can come to what the charter and the bylaws require. They are not recorded. Once we record them, they are recorded forever. So we're not going to do that. Further discussion.
Mr. Jonathan Barnes.
Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jonathan Barnes, Precinct 5. I'm sorry. My question is to get off of the issue of the 20 people to call the roll call, but back to the more fundamental question. I do understand what the methodology is that you, Mr. Moderator, are suggesting will go into effect for this town meeting in the event of a call for a roll call vote. What I don't necessarily understand is what is the vision that would be put into effect if the instructional motion was to go into effect. So I'm just curious about, is there, I'm assuming if there were another means to do it electronically as the instructional motion is suggesting, you would have incorporated that in your methodology. So I'm assuming that whatever it is that would be envisioned under the instructional motion to capture electronically the roll call vote doesn't yet exist. Is that correct?
The method we're going to use did not exist a couple of weeks ago, but it now does. Up until a couple of weeks ago, we could put on recorded votes for everything or nothing, and we would not have the report till the meeting ended. But there's now a way to call out individual articles to have a recorded vote. So that's what we will use for a potential roll call, if we come to that.
So I guess thank you. I guess then my question is how is that in fact then different from what is proposed in the instructional method, in the instructional motion as a means to capture electronically the roll call vote?
You would have to ask the mover of the motion for that, but I believe it's because it was put in before we had announced that this new
Okay.
method.
Thank you.
Yes. Further discussion.
We have we have Mr. Brown has not had his name up first.
Oh, Mr. Brown. Okay, Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown, we can't hear you.
By the way, when people speak, most of you have done this, but when people speak, please state your name and your precinct. Okay, we'll have to move on. Next one.
Mr. Carnahan.
Mr. Carnahan.
Yes, thank you. Joe Carnahan, Precinct 6. I'd like to, for everyone who has concerns about the means by which a roll call vote is called, whether it's the number of people or the visibility into that, I would like to call their attention to another instructional motion that we're not considering yet, where we've instructed the bylaw committee to revisit those issues, and I would encourage them to support that instructional motion, and so we can go on to voting on this one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Further discussion.
Stephen Herrick.
Mr. Herrick.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I guess I'd just like to point out to everybody here that what we're really talking about is capturing information that we otherwise would already be capturing and doing it in a much more expeditious manner. The request has been made of the moderator and the clerk and the others who are supporting this operation to come up with a way of doing this more effectively. And thank you. It appears that they have come up with a way of doing this more effectively in working with the folks at Zoom. So that's great. And I kind of feel like we're beating a dead horse here just a little bit, because this hopefully, fingers crossed here, as Ellen indicated earlier, hopefully this is the last town meeting we'll be having in this format. And this is really just a discussion about how this will play out in the eventuality, and that the roll call is made during this current town meeting. And if they didn't have the technology to do it, it'd be kind of a moot point. They do have the technology. We're going to capture the data. I think it's a great idea. I have no problem with anybody knowing how I vote on anything. I wouldn't have a problem if they recorded my vote on every vote I've ever made. Might have a hard time explaining it down the road, but there it is. So I support the motion, but I think it's time to take a vote and move on to the business of town meeting.
Further discussion.
Mr. Leahy.
Mr. Leahy.
Sorry, Mr. Leahy.
Steve Leahy, Precinct 3, I move we vote on the motion.
Can you repeat that, please?
I move we vote on the motion, if I can do that. I'm new to this, so.
Move the question.
Oh, if you move the question, I'm sorry, it was just becoming a little garbled. Okay, is there a second to that? Second, thank you. All right, moving the question ends debate on this particular motion. It's non-debatable, and we will need a poll. We'll probably have a generic one that says, if you vote yes, it means you're voting to end debate. We'll go straight to a vote. If you vote no, it means you want the debate to go on. So if we could have a poll put up, we will vote on ending debate.
The vote's going to
there's
come as a poll,
Yep.
not as a show of hands.
Correct. And at the PAC?
1 yes, 0 no.
Mr. Moderator, there's a point of order from Jonathan Barnes in the chat.
Mr. Barnes, point of order.
Please raise your hand, Mr. Barnes, so I can call on you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Barnes.
I'm sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jonathan Barnes, Precinct 5. My only comment is that with respect to motions of the previous question, and again, the distinction between Zoom and in person is that the body can observe how many other people have raised their hand before the motion for a previous question has to be voted on. I'm not sure. I'm going to guess there isn't a way to do that in this context, and I'm not necessarily asking to do that, but I just wanted to see if that has been considered by town moderator.
Well, as far as we know, there's no way to solve that easily, and
Or at all.
or at
Zoom
all.
does
Right,
not,
right.
Zoom does not allow that in
Zoom does
webinar.
not allow it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And as again, it's one of these drawbacks. That's one of the things you'll give up a little bit on a Zoom meeting.
Thank you.
We have 168 to 13.
168 in the affirmative and 13 in the negative. The motion carries. We have ended debate. We will now go straight to the question. The instructional motion, we need a poll for that as well. Instructional motion, please vote yes or no when the poll comes up. I'm sorry. Okay.
We got it. What's the number of the pack?
Got it. The pack vote. The pack.
1 yes, 0 no.
Okay. Now we need the no votes.
So it's 125, excuse me, 125 to 56.
So the motion carries, the instructional motion carries 125 to 56. Ms. Herrick moves that we lay Article 3 back on the table. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please raise your hand.
Mr. Moderator, we have a point of order from Paul Sylvester.
Mr. Sylvester.
Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find him. Go ahead, Mr. Sylvester.
Paul Sylvester, Precinct 3. I just wanted to make clear that we weren't approving that article. We were only approving that one particular motion of the article.
Correct. Okay. We have have we taken the vote? No votes? Yes. Okay. Okay. We're also, what is the vote on the laying it on the table?
No, you only did yes votes.
Oh, you only
Oh,
did yes.
we didn't-
We need no votes too. I'm sorry.
We didn't take yes votes.
On laying it back on the table?
Correct.
Okay. All those in favor of laying it on the table, Article 3, please raise your hand. And the pack?
Okay.
1
No.
yes, 0 no.
Okay, we'll clear that out. And those opposed?
Second.
Is that not cleared out yet?
No, hold on.
Okay, hold
There
on.
you go.
The vote hasn't cleared out. Now we go. Now those opposed to the laying it on the table?
One 144 to 6.
Vote being 144 to 6 to lay it on the table. Article, the substance of Article 3 is laid on the table. Business under Article 4, Mr. LaLashore.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Oh,
I'd be pleased to do Article 4 because that does need to come before the budget, but then I know you wanted Article 8 and 19.
That's right. So you want to go ahead with 4?
We need it before the budget. It could happen on Thursday. That's up to you.
Okay, well, why don't we do 4, then we'll ask the town to move up 8 and 19. So go ahead, Mr. LaLashore.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Let me share my screen. Town meeting members, Article 4 places items in the capital plan. There's a few parts to that. Bond council requires that we specifically identify 3 years. So FY21 is the current year, FY22 and 23 are the next 2 years. So you'll see details next to those 3 years. You'll see items under both the general fund and our 3 enterprise funds as necessary. The charter requires a minimum of a 5-year capital plan. We have a 10-year capital plan. Normally, these things work in pairs. So if we don't have any FY21 requests, but if we did, Article 5 would then request the funding of those items. We do have, as you can see from the screen in front of you, several items requested for FY22, and those the funding of those will be taken up as part of the budget process, which is Article 16. So again, Article 4 just places items in the capital improvements program. You can see a number of items here. Most significantly, 2 capital projects that we'd like to have the design money for next year, and you'll see debt authorizations in the future for these. And then there's a couple of things in enterprise funds. We're just describing one change, and for convenience, we describe some debt changes. So that's all for Article 4. It's a little bit light this year. And again, the funding of any of these capital items does not happen in this article.
Okay. Further discussion?
Alan, do you want to have FinCom reports?
Oh, yes, we should on that. Yes. FinCom report?
Yeah, there's Ed Ross.
Okay, Mr. Ross.
So you want me to take over while you're doing it?
Is Mr. Ross unmuted?
I got it.
Oh, we have a few technical difficulties here.
Okay,
Yep, got
Mr.
it.
Ross, can you unmute
Yep,
yourself?
thanks, everybody. Hi, Ed Ross, FinCom. On our March 17th meeting, we voted 8-0 to approve this article for the town.
Thank you. Now, open to discussion, further discussion? Before I take that, are we having some issues over there? We able to go ahead, or do you need a minute?
I can cover
Oh,
for her.
okay, okay. Further discussion.
We have Nancy Doctor.
Ms. Doctor.
Go ahead and unmute yourself, Nancy.
Nancy, Dr. Precinct 1. So I just wanted to check the town manager. So I do have a question about the town hall generator. Would you prefer that I bring that up for discussion on Thursday when you talk about the capital?
Nancy, why don't you bring it up now?
Okay, the reason why I had a question about that is because it struck me that, you know, it's kind of a marriage between public health and public safety. And I had a couple of concerns that I was hoping either you or perhaps our health director or the Board of Health could help talk a little bit more about what this collaborative move is actually going to look like, you know, what the background is. You have stated somewhere in our handout that this type of move isn't really seen in the Commonwealth. And I was hoping that the health director could maybe give us a little background on this move and maybe to help clarify some potential questions that might come up about who might own certain things when it comes down to budget and policy. I can certainly elaborate on that. You know, who's going to determine how funding, say, for the coalition is spent? Is that going to be the health director or the police chief? How are conflicts going to be handled within policies of those two? One that certainly comes up is looking at the increase calls that you have for mental health services, which have been steadily increasing every single year. And the police budget request for tasers, which the majority are used actually on people who are in a mental health crisis. And I can certainly go on about a number of potential questions that I would have about this merger. And I was hoping that we could get some background from the Board of Health and the health director.
Mr. Moderator.
Mr. LaLachair.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Nancy, the vast majority of your questions and comments and concerns should come up if we do the budget on Thursday night. This specifically is just talking about a single piece of a capital, so I'll restrict my comments to that. Along with the virus vaccinations we received, we needed to have immediate, cold storage. So in fact, we are using both the police station and the fire station. So we are not in need of storage for public health at the town hall. We have those two alternatives. Depending on which exact item was being stored, that was how we decided between fire department and police station. But in point of fact, there are generators in other buildings that are currently being used by the Board of Health and by health staff. So there's no need for one in this building at Town Hall.
Okay, further discussion.
Will Finch. Will, if you go ahead and unmute yourself.
Mr. Finch.
Yeah. Oop. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I hope so. Yeah, Will Finch, Precinct 8. I just wanted to point out on the funding for just I missed that page. Sorry, I'll have to withdraw that. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, we have Jonathan Barnes.
Oh, a point of information, Mr. Barnes.
This is Steve Leahy. Can you hear me?
We actually called on Mr. Barnes.
Right, well, mine came up on mute, so I unmuted it.
Hold on a minute. Let's go to Mr. Barnes and I'll come back to you.
Okay.
Mr. Barnes?
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate it. Jonathan Barnes, Precinct 5. Just a real simple question. My apologies again. I think up on the screen was only the slide pertaining to the general fund. And I just want to make sure that I'm clear and that other town meeting members are clear that when we vote on this article, that we're not only voting on this particular page, but we're voting on all, in addition to the general fund, the enterprise funds as well?
Yes, Mr. Moderator. This was the second slide. There's not really a lot going on in the enterprise funds, just this $100,000 request in the stormwater. But you're correct, Mr. Barnes. It's both general fund and enterprise funds.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I knew what we were voting on when we vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion.
We have two, Mr. Moderator, Jamie Mon and then Steve Leahy. We'll go with Jamie first.
Okay, Mr. Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4. Just a question. That $250,000 for the Parker roof is designated as design funds. If the design is $250,000, how much do you anticipate the construction cost will be? And I assume that it would be more than just new shingles. Is it complete replacement of the Parker Middle School roof?
Mr. LaCheur?
Thanks, Mr. Moderator. I'm just flipping through the warrant here. Jamie, if you look at Article 14, which will come up sometime in the next 3 months, that is more discussion and description about the Parker Middle School roof. The anticipation is $2.7 million for almost a full replacement. And that's a debt authorization request that you'll see again later in the town meeting. So it's a big project.
It sounds like it. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? Yes.
It's Steve Leahy's next. Steve, if you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Mr.
Steve Leahy, Precinct 3. So these are capital changes over the next 10 years, right? These funds are spread out over the 10 years.
Mr. LaCheur?
Capital improvements.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Well, specifically, these are changes only for the current year and the next 2 years that are listed. In your blue pages in the warrant report are a full 10-year of changes, but changes made, for instance, in year 10 are not necessary to describe.
So these numbers are for the will go into the budget this year and next year.
That's essentially correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, further discussion?
Mr. Moderator, we have Will Finch. Will, if you go ahead
Mr.
and
Finch?
Yeah, hi. Apologize, Will Finch, Precinct 8. My point will be that in the FY22,
try, couldn't before.
the turf field and project in FY23,
Yeah, I can't do
that
it.
is something that could be funded by the Community Preservation Act. And so I'm hoping that we can consider that issue in the future. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Mr. Moderator, seeing none.
Seeing none. Are we ready for the vote? We will need a poll for this. Can we call up a poll for the motion under Article 4? And while we're doing that, in the pack?
1 yes, 0 no.
Mr. Moderator, we can end the poll.
Okay. And if you could tell us the vote.
And we have 171 to 3.
171 in the affirmative, 3 in the negative. The motion carries. Now, the town manager, through our select board, has asked that we bring the substance of Article 8 before us next. So Ms. Herrick moves that we take Article 8 out of order. I have a second. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and in the pack?
1 yes, 0 no.
Okay. And do we have the pro total?
I'm going to lower the hands
Okay.
and
Thank you. Now the no votes, those opposed?
$142 to 6.
142 to 6. The motion carries to take Article 8 out of order. So Article 8 is now before us.
You, Kevin.
Mr. LaLaSure, are you going to say anything, or do you want me to go straight to Ms.
Julie
Mercier?
Mercier will make a presentation. Julie, if you need me to share the screen, just give me a holler.
Okay, Ms. Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Bob, and thank you, town meeting members, for allowing me to take Article 8 out of order. I will share my screen with everybody. 1 second. Okay. Bear with me 1 minute. Okay, does that look right for people?
Looks good.
So Article 8 is a zoning bylaw amendment. I am here, Julie Mercier, Community Development Director, presenting on behalf of the Community Planning and Development Commission. Article 8, the zoning bylaw amendment, makes changes to sections 2, 4, and 5 of the zoning bylaw regarding outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage. Just a quick CPDC report to town meeting. At their public hearing of January 11th, 2021, the Community Planning and Development Commission voted 5-0-0 to recommend Article 8 to town meeting. So why is this amendment needed? The current zoning bylaw lacks a clear mechanism to allow businesses to use their private outdoor spaces for continuing operations. This was brought to light around this time last year due to the pandemic. Benefits of the proposed amendment that I'm about to go through. So we needed a clear and consistent process in zoning to handle a range of uses and activities that different businesses of all different types would like to carry out on their properties. This amendment will set parameters while also allowing flexibility for businesses to be creative. It provides a public process for abutting property owners and tenants. And the CPDC believes that it adds vitality and builds resilience in town, even beyond the pandemic. There are 3 main changes in sections 2 and section 5. The first one is to modify and expand the existing definition the bylaw has of open storage, which gets at the display of retail merchandise outside, and which is one component of what the CPDC would like to do with this amendment. So we would modify and expand that definition into a definition for outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage. The second thing is that it would add this as an accessory use to the tables of uses. Tables of uses can be found in section 5.3.1 and section 5.3.2. And it would be allowed in the certain zoning districts by a minor site plan review process with the Community Planning and Development Commission. And then the third thing that changes in section 5 is that we would remove open storage as a use by special permit. We would have wrapped it into this use by minor site plan review. And so the special permit section would no longer be needed. So I'm going to go through these in a little bit more detail. Again, with regards to modifying and expanding the definition of open storage, there are 2 paragraphs here. The top paragraph is the way that this looks in your warrant, which is a little bit crazy and hard to follow. So the below paragraph is what it will end up looking like once it's modified. And so we're defining outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage as the relocation or extension of indoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage to outdoor areas as an accessory use on the same lot as a lawful principal use. So then again, we need to add it as an accessory use to the tables of uses. The red text here just indicates that this is the section I'm talking about on this slide. In section 5.3.1, which is the table of uses for business and industrial districts, we would be adding the outdoor commerce, which I should start using the acronym OCDPS, which is what we've been calling it in town hall for the last half a year. So it adds OCDPS instead of open storage. We take away open storage and add it in here. And then we show that we're allowing it by minor site plan review, which is MSPR, in all of the business, industrial, and overlay districts. To that point, we have a footnote which notes that we would also be allowing this by minor site plan review in the downtown smart growth district, and that it would never be applicable to home occupation or special home occupation uses in any district. So moving along, we are proposing to add it in section 5.3.2, which is here in red, which is the table of uses for residence districts. This is important because we do have a number of lawful pre-existing businesses in residence districts throughout town, and so we want to make sure to include them in this as well. So here in this table, we're adding it as a new use, and we're allowing it by minor site plan review in these 3 residential columns. We are not allowing it in the planned residential developments or the planned unit developments. One example of a planned unit development is Johnson Woods, for example. So in those types of developments where there's not lawful pre-existing businesses, we would not need to allow it. And then again, we have a footnote in this case for this table, it's footnote 4, and it says that this is applicable to legally existing businesses in residence districts where the principal use of the site is commercial. And this is not applicable, again, to home occupation or special home occupation uses in any district. And then just a sort of note of additional thing we need to do is this is the first time in the zoning bylaw that we're using this acronym MSPR in the use tables. So we need to add it to this paragraph here that talks about what the acronyms mean. So we've added it, the letters MSPR denote a use permitted in a particular district only by minor site plan review from the CPDC, unless it's approved as part of a full site plan review application. So, and what that means is if a new site, commercial site comes through permitting and they want to, think about outdoor use while they're coming through permitting for their new site, they could do that at the same time as they get their full site plan review and site plan approval. And then, like I mentioned, because we've wrapped this storage idea into the OCDPS by minor site plan review, we can now remove the open storage section out of the special permit section. So that's what's proposed on this slide. Moving along, there are 3 main changes in section 4. Section 4 is the section of the zoning bylaw that includes site plan review. So these changes, first, we're adding this use as a trigger for minor site plan review. And then we are modifying and clarifying the procedures for submittal requirements, notification to abutting owners, businesses, and tenants, minor modifications, and waivers. And then thirdly, there are special criteria for approval for these outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage applications that we would be establishing, as well as a remedy for ongoing noncompliance. So going through these in a little bit more detail, adding it as a trigger really just means we're adding, we have 3 triggers already, A, B, and C, and we're adding D. So any application that wants to have outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage needs to come through a minor site plan review process. That's what's happening in on this slide, in this section. And then we're modifying and clarifying procedures for submittal requirements. And this seems pretty basic, but we're just reducing the number of hard copies of things we need, as we've been doing for the last many years, and especially in the past year where we're all virtual. And then again, pretty standard, we're requiring a complete application officially, which we always have before, but we just figured we might as well put that in here. And then with the case, specifically with outdoor commerce applications where you might have a business that's in a building with other businesses, we really need to make sure that we have authorization from the property owner that that use would be something they would be okay with. So just to clarify what I'm doing here with the red text, which I should have clarified before, the red text is just highlighting what I'm talking about, and then also some key takeaways from each slide. So the key takeaways from this slide are that we're adding a requirement for the completed application and also authorization from the property owner. Okay, so then modifying and clarifying procedures for notification. What's different about this section is that we're clarifying that we want postage stamped envelopes from the abutters. And then we are also clarifying that for applications under this OCDPS use, staff will also be notifying business owners and tenants, business tenants within the 300-foot radius and potentially more. For example, if there's a site that has multiple businesses on the property and they all use that same parking lot, And that we know that like businesses across the street also rely on that parking lot, or patrons park there and patronize other businesses in the area. We would want to make sure to notify all the different stakeholders that we are aware of that may be impacted by such a proposal. And one thing to clarify, and a key takeaway from this slide, is that the staff would be doing this notification. The only thing required from the applicant is that they would need to give us the postage stamped envelopes addressed to the property owner or abutters, and that's something that we've been doing for many years, and it's typical across all the applications that we handle in the planning office. So that would not change. And we send out the mailing, and then we would notify the businesses and tenants under these applications as well. Okay. So clarifying procedures for minor modifications. So if someone wanted to modify their approved minor site plan review, it would be subject to the same process as any minor modification to a site plan review that's already in the bylaw. That process does allow for an administrative approval by staff. Typically what happens with that is that if it's something really simple, really minor, we'll do it. If we feel like there's any question about whether there should be a public process or whether the CPDC might want to see it, we'll reach out to the chair of the CPDC and get their read on it. And, you know, we tend to err on the side of caution and bring more things to the CPDC than less, just to allow them there to be a more robust public conversation. So for all of the outdoor commerce, dining, programming, and storage applications, we would have a public process. This is related to minor modifications to those approvals, like at some point in the future. So the addition of, like, say there was, for example, a site that was approved to have outdoor dining and a certain number of tables, and they want to add a table. And it didn't seem like a big, maybe it wouldn't seem like a big deal. We would, you know, check with staff, check with the CPDC chair, and we may approve it administratively versus having a full public process again. Okay. And then modifying the procedures for waivers. So currently in the minor site plan section of the bylaw, we have these two paragraphs that are like extremely similar. The difference really is this first paragraph is for loading requirements, and it applies to all districts. And then this second paragraph here is for parking, loading, and design requirements, and it applies only to business districts. But the wording is pretty much the same. So what I did is I took it and combined it into one paragraph. So it covers parking, loading, and related design requirements. And then we took away this language about business districts so that it could apply to any district, any of the business, industrial, and residential districts and overlay districts. So the importance of this change is because many businesses have parking lots, private parking lots, and those are the areas that we see most commonly the businesses want to use for continuing operations and extension of their use outside. And we would need to be able to grant them a waiver to use their parking area for something other than parking for the duration of time of their application, right? So of their proposal. Okay. And then the third thing is that we have established criteria for approval for these applications. And again, I think I mentioned earlier that the goal here was to have parameters, but also have them be a little bit, they're a little bit flexible. So businesses can come and talk to the CPDC and tell the CPDC what it is they need to run their business, and then let the CPDC kind of figure out, like, does that make sense for the neighborhood? You know, rather than putting really prescriptive parameters in place that like don't really work for businesses. I don't claim in any sense to be an entrepreneur to have really any understanding of what a business needs to survive. And so we just want to make sure that we're letting them tell us what they need, and then we can kind of go from there. And by us, I mean CPDC. Okay, so criteria for approval. What I've put in red here are just kind of the general categories. So the CPDC will be looking at duration of use, site circulation and access, parking, intensification of use, structures and furnishings, materials and products, lighting, heating, and sound, setbacks, visual impact, signage, and competing uses and neighborhood coordination. And then, last but not least, I think this is last but not least, there is a remedy for ongoing noncompliance. And so this remedy basically handles situations in which a site is not really functioning in accordance with this decision of approval, or is having ongoing issues that need to be addressed. And so in this instance, the applicant would need to propose solutions to staff, and then we may require that they come back to CPDC. If there's ongoing failure to comply, it could result in rescission of the permit. And I highlighted in red this important thing that I just read to you, but all of this language here is new for the zoning bylaw, and all of it would be going in as a condition to all decisions of approval. So applicants would be made aware of it right up front. Yes, that was last but not least. So that's all from me.
Do we have a CPDC report?
It was at the beginning of my presentation.
Oh, it was. Okay.
But I can reiterate if you like.
Yeah, if you I missed that. Could you reiterate that?
Sure. Yeah. So January 11th, 2021, they held a public hearing and they voted 5-0-0 to recommend Article 8 to town meeting.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Okay, we have Mr. O'Neill. Can you hear me? Can you now? Moderator, you have Mr. O'Neill.
Mr. O'Neill?
John O'Neill, Precinct 4.
Okay.
It seemed obvious, but that the minor site plan review is a less onerous process than a special permit. But could Julie explain exactly how it is a more effective and easier process than having to go through a special permit?
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, Mr. O'Neill, that's a great question. I'm happy to explain that. So the minor site plan review process, just like the site plan review process, is non-statutory, which means that it's not specifically tied to any of the lengthy statutory timeframe special permit process. This gives us flexibility to respond to requests more quickly. That being said, the minor site plan review process is a tried and true method that has been reviewed many applications over the years. And we do, want to make sure that we provide a public process and that we provide adequate public notification. So while we might not be required to provide a 2-week notification that's in the zoning statute, chapter 40A, we would want to provide probably at least a week notice to abutters to let everybody know of these applications. But the general consensus is that the minor site plan review process could be quicker and easier to administer. And typically with minor site plan review applications, the CPDC will take 1 meeting. Every once in a while, it's more than that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion?
Mr. Barnes.
Mr. Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jonathan Barnes, Precinct 5. First, Julian, and to the CPDC, thank you very much for doing this. Obviously, this is important to have clarified and include, and I very much appreciate the effort and the time that went into this. And I thank you. But I did have a couple of questions about the process, and I don't know what the best way to do this is. I think I have 2 basic questions. One is, I guess, the first in the area of 4.6.3, the minor site plan review, which talks about authorizing the community development director to grant this approval. Although I do understand, Julie, that even though it does make it more efficient by allowing the community development director to grant administrative approval, it further states that ultimately the minor site plan review is not considered complete until it actually has been approved in writing by the CPDC. Is that correct? So it has to go before the CPDC eventually for their imprimatur.
Mercier?
Mr. Moderator, thank you. So John, that's a really good question. Thank you for asking. There's actually a couple things going on there. In general, with the minor site plan review process, that clause does allow me, the community development director, to grant an administrative approval. Our typical process in town is that we run things by the chair and let them decide if they should go to the Community Planning and Development Commission or not. We do err on the side of caution and bring almost all applications to the CPDC. However, with the outdoor commerce, dining, programming, and storage applications, those would always all go to the Community Planning and Development Commission. There would not be an administrative approval, at least for the first go at that. I was mentioning earlier the minor modification process. Like if there were a minor modification request to an already approved minor site plan review, that may be done administratively. But the first application under this new use would absolutely go to the Community Planning and Development Commission.
Okay, thank you. That certainly clarifies it for me, and I appreciate that. But nonetheless, even though you're suggesting that at least for the time being, it will always at least be run through the CPDC director first, the provision of the bylaw will ultimately allow for administrative approval by you, by the community development director, and I think that's great. I have no problem or question about that. Certainly about your ability and your competence to do that. But what I was interested in is, and I'm glad that it does include notification to not just to abutters or not just to the owners, but to abutters. But what I did have a little bit of concern about, and I'm toying with the idea of presenting a motion, but I wanted to hash this out with you first. It does not provide for any time period. I know you mentioned just now that you would like to see or you would consider notification of at least 7 days. I was thinking originally 14, but I don't care about the time period as long as there is a time period. So the language that exists now does not include any set time period for the notification to go to the abutters in advance of any decision being made, either by the administrative review, by the community development director, or by ultimately the CPDC. So that being the case, what I was thinking was a motion to add a sentence in 4632. I guess it's the second paragraph that starts with "for minor site plan review by the CPDC," and then at the end of that, add where you have written in bold, "for applications under outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage, notification will also be provided to businesses and tenants located on the site within 300-foot radius of the site." At a minimum, I would like to propose adding the following sentence: "Notice provided shall be at least," I'm happy with 7 days, "before any decision by the community development director or the CPDC." Would that be something that you would see favorably, or does that present a problem to you or
Well,
the CPDC?
it presents a problem to the moderator. It's not part of the changes that are being proposed, so it would be outside of the scope of this particular motion, with this particular article. So
thank you, Mr. Moderator. I do understand that, but so you're suggesting that adding that as a sentence to what is being proposed is not acceptable?
maybe I misunderstood. Where are you adding it?
In the second paragraph in that 4632, the paragraph that starts with "for minor site plan review by the CPDC," but the area that's in bold is what's being added. It says "for applications under outdoor commerce, etc." I'm suggesting adding a sentence that says "notification provided shall be at least 7 days before any decision by this community development director or CPDC."
All right, I'm sorry to ask you, but one more time, where exactly are you putting this? I'm having trouble finding where you're
Right
saying.
where whoever is writing that in is where I'm suggesting it go. "Notification provided shall be at least 7 days before any decision made by the community development director or by CPDC." Would that be within the scope of the
Before I
article?
answer that, Laura, do you have exactly what he's talking about?
Yes, just putting on the screen.
Oh, good. Oh, great. Oh, okay, that makes it easier. All right, yeah, I will allow that. That is adding to what we are adding to. So I will allow that if that's what the motion you want to make.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And the reason I'm presenting it and I'm asking Julie for your feedback on it is this addition to the language regarding open storage to include outdoor commerce, et cetera, is really important and really valuable. But it is certainly opening up this whole subject matter to the outdoors. So it is, I think, of paramount importance to the abutters, clearly. And I know this might have come up in the last summer when we had some issues with respect to that. So I think it might be even more important that the abutters not only be notified, but they actually have an opportunity in the bylaw, have a stated opportunity to have a time period within which to provide their feedback to you and or to CPDC.
Okay, are you making that motion?
I am making that motion, but I guess I'm also just asking for I'm not looking to make this any more complicated for the CPDC or for the community development director. So I am making that motion, but I guess I'm seeking also some feedback from Julie if I could.
Okay, I just noticed that Ms. Mercier gave you a thumbs up.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so is there a second for that? Thank you. There's a second. Okay, so now subject turns to the proposed amendment, which adds the line that Mr. Barnes just proposed. Is there further discussion on that proposed amendment?
Mr. Moderator, we have a number of hands up
Okay,
already from asking to speak, so I'm not sure which ones have their hands up for the amendment. So we'll just go first with Ms. Binda.
okay, Ms. Binda.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Julie and the CPDC for doing all this work. I have a couple questions about this also.
We're talking about the amendment, you understand?
No.
No.
Okay. Okay. So
Okay.
if I lower my hand,
yeah, anybody who wanted to speak on the main motion, please lower your hand. We are now talking strictly on the amendment. And we'll get back to you. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Thank you. Sorry about that. Do we have any?
Okay, yes, we have
yes, we do.
3. Yep.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. DeRezzo.
Mr. DeRezzo.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tony DeRezzo, Precinct 2, also associate member of the CPDC. And this is when it's Julie. I know we have a meeting Wednesday based on whether or not this bylaw passes. My question is, does this change impact any of the outstanding site plan reviews for the OCDBS?
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. It does not. We advertised the meeting on April 28th and also the meeting on May 4th, tentatively and pending town meeting approval and any changes to the language of this article. The advertisement printed, I believe, on Tuesday the 13th and Tuesday the 20th. So we provided more than 7 days notification.
Well, it specifically says that we're going to mail out the notification.
It's been mailed.
Okay, perfect. Just checking. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. Arena.
Mr. Arena.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. John Arena, Precinct 1. Committees make many decisions. Is the intent of the amendment to allow 7 days before any decision or before the vote?
Do we have an answer? I would either call on Mr. Barnes or Ms. Mercier. Either one have an answer on that? Ms. Mercier?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you for the question, Mr. Arena. I think that we could clarify that question by putting decisions, capitalizing the D and saying decisions of approval here under or something to that effect. If that satisfies, I would capitalize the A as well, maybe use that term further down in this section.
Before we proceed, is that okay with Mr. Barnes, who made the original motion?
Go ahead, Mr. Barnes.
Yes, it is. I'm giving a thumbs up.
Okay, okay. All right, did we have a point of order? Oh, no, oh, that's fine, okay. Further discussion?
Seeing none.
Seeing none, all right, we will now take a vote on the proposed amendment, which adds the words notification provided shall be at least 7 days before any decisions of approval hereunder are made by the Community Development Director or the CPDC. We will try this by a show of hands. All those in favor, please raise your hand. And at the pack,
1 yes, 0 no.
okay. All right.
Okay.
All right,
Lowering
we'll lower the
hands.
hands. And all those opposed?
Well, 137 to 16.
147 in the affirmative, 16 in the negative. The
137, sir.
I'm sorry, 137?
137.
137, excuse me. A little bit of an echo here. The motion being 137 in the affirmative, 16 in the negative. The motion carries and the main motion has been amended. We will now go back to discussion on the main motion. Oh, before I do that, I'm sorry. I should point out on a similar note that we had that I thought Mr. Barnes was doing. We had a proposed amendment by Ms. Whiting to change the words Board of Selectmen on page 10 of the warrant in section 5.2.1. Unfortunately, that is not part of this article and cannot be addressed. But I will point out that all of those cases of Board of Selectmen are being looked at and will be changed in the next round. Okay, further discussion.
Mr. Barnes.
Mr. Barnes.
Jonathan Barnes, Precinct 5. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. And I'm sorry to be a nitpicker about this stuff, but I think it's important to clarify and to avoid problems in the future. So I did have one other area where I may want to. I think I do want to make a motion in 4634, Julie, which is criteria for approval. And the reason why I think this clarification may be important is that this is the section that sets out the specific criteria that are permissible by the bylaw to be considered by CPDC in either imposing conditions or approving or denying a specific request for minor site plan. So it's important in order to avoid issues or potential litigation with an applicant. I think it's important to have these criteria really clearly spelled out. So particularly where you are, the proposed bylaw or the existing bylaw talks about, and you noted the areas that are important. I'm focusing on materials and products, and particularly visual impact, which is F and I. And I guess what I'm getting at, and I think that the primary purpose for the bylaw is to get at outdoor commerce largely, but my concern has to do with outdoor storage, or because this bylaw amendment will now allow for, in addition to outdoor commerce, it allows for the possibility of outdoor storage of goods. And I know that it makes clear in F, I believe, no, I strike that in, I'm sorry. It is in F. It does make clear that it's pertaining to materials and products shall be for sale on site only. But I'm concerned about the visual impact that may be presented by a particular applicant in the manner in which they store their material for sale. And I'm thinking items that may be boxed or otherwise. And while F talks about one of the criteria being that the materials and products shall not generate dust, noise, and then it talks generally about other objectionable effects. In in F, it also talks about measures to address the effect of the use of the material, but not the particular material itself. And what I'm getting at is that I can envision the possibility that material for sale may be stored in a manner that is not visually appealing or difficult. And I want to be sure that the CPDC or you as the community development director has the ability to consider that aspect. So in other words, not just the effect by fencing or planting or sculptures, but actually considering as a criteria the manner in which materials or products may be stored on the site. So what I was considering was a motion, which I guess I'll make and then have the discussion in I, assuming this is permissible, Mr. Moderator, where it says the visual impact measures to address the effect of the use, such as plantings, fencing, sculptures, trellises, and artwork, etc., on neighbors. I'm proposing to add and including consideration of the visual impact of the specific materials and products located, displayed, or stored outdoors.
Right. Okay, get the rest of it in there.
So while that's being typed, what I'm getting at is that I don't want the CPDC or the community development director in these instances of applications for storage, outdoor storage, to be limited by just mitigation efforts such as fencing, sculptures, and trellises to hide or to buffer, but also have the allowed ability to consider the manner or method in which items are actually, the materials are actually stored outdoors, if that's clear.
Okay, I will accept that. Is there a second? Second. Okay, now discussion turns to the proposed amendment. Is there further discussion on the amendment?
Okay. I see Ms. Binda.
Okay, Ms. Binda.
No, my hand was raised before the amendment, so I will lower my hand and raise it again.
Okay. Any further
Mr. Herrick.
discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Herrick.
Mr. Herrick.
Same deal. I'm pre-amendment.
Okay, is there further discussion?
Anthony DeRezzo.
DeRezzo? Mr. DeRezzo?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Tony DeRezzo, Precinct 2 and Associate Member of CPDC. I applaud Mr. Barnes on thinking about the impacts of such things. But at this point, I have to say that there are limits to what I think the CPDC would be comfortable with forcing people to do. If a business, for some reason, decides to present their products for display in a manner that some may find less than appealing, it's really not up to the CPDC in the town to tell them that that's not an option for them. However, I do believe I allows the CPDC to ensure that such displays will be screened from the neighbors and from others so that it really only impacts the business and its customers. Thank you.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. Ventura.
Mr. Ventura.
Hi, Mark Ventura, Precinct 2. I favor these amendments and this article. My question is, does this bypass the special permit process? And if so, will it have the same scrutiny from a life safety standpoint from police and fire? And is there a different fee structure for the applicant?
Ms. Mercier, do we have an answer?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Ventura. So this, as noted earlier in the presentation, the section for special permit for open storage would be removed. So this would be a site plan review process and not a special permit process. would be subject to the same level of scrutiny by our public safety. We have development review team meetings, which is the development review team is a group of staff from all different departments of town that review plans and proposals. And we've held them already for these applications in preparation for hopefully this amendment passing and CPDC being able to take up some pending applications that we have. And we would continue to do that. With regard to the fee structure, there's actually no charge for minor site plan review where there is for a special permit. It's nominal, the special permit charges.
Yeah. Yeah, keep in mind, yeah. Okay, further discussion on the proposed amendment.
Okay, I see Tom Grant.
Mr. Grant?
Hi, thank you, Mr. Moderator. This is Tom Grant from Precinct 4. I appreciate what Mr. Barnes is doing here with this amendment. I just think that the original, the way it's written originally would cover such things as the visual impact of materials and products stored outdoors. It just says measures to address the effect of the use on neighbors, which should include the things he suggests in his amendment. I'm not saying his amendment's bad, I just think it's fine the way it's already written. Thank you.
Further discussion on the amendment?
Kevin Leet.
Okay.
Hi, Kevin Leet, Precinct 1. I actually agree with Mr. Grant that I think this is leaning a little far into what could be considered codified NIMBYism. So I would say what's originally there is probably enough to keep from visualization what would be objectionable without getting too impinging on the businesses themselves.
Thank you. Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
We have Stephen Zessis.
Mr. Zess?
Yes, thank you. Steve Zestis, Precinct 4. I just had a question around where the line is, because I worry about things such as, suppose someone said, I don't like a particular type of fencing. Would the business or proposed person then have to sort of get into a discussion around what the beauty of the fencing is, and suppose that that's more expensive? And I'm just curious as to sort of where those lines should be and ought to be.
Okay, keep in mind we're talking about this added line, but further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. Mon.
Mr. Mon?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4. Having been on a number of boards and commissions in this town, I would accept and applaud more clarification rather than less in any bylaw. And I think what Mr. Barnes has proposed provides more clarification, gives CPDC more direction and more cover, if you will. And as people that seem to be opposed to this acknowledge, these factors are already covered. It just provides more clarity. So I fully support this amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. Herrick.
Mr. Herrick.
I move the question on the amendment.
On the amendment only. Okay, we have a motion to end debate. Is there a second? Second. This requires a 2/3 vote and it is non-debatable. Do we have a poll ready to go to vote yes if you want to end debate on this proposed amendment? Or no if you want to vote against the proposed amendment? And the poll will be coming in just a second. Here we go. And now at the back.
1 yes, 0 no.
Okay.
Get end of it, the poll.
We have an end of the poll, okay.
So it's 159 to 19.
159 in the affirmative, 19 in the negative. Motion carries and debate is ended on the proposed amendment. We will now go straight to a vote on the proposed amendment. Again, we will do this through a poll. So if we could remove this poll and bring up another one on the proposed amendment. So a yes vote adds these new words. Here we are. And at the pack.
1 yes, 0 no.
Thank you. We have a point of order from Ms. Wiggins. Could you
Ms.
unmute?
Wiggins, please raise your hand. Yeah, thank you. And go ahead.
Thank you, Teresa Wiggins. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The poll that came out said that we were voting on the article, but I thought we were voting on the amendment.
You're right. If this is only the amendment, we must be using a generic poll. So this is
Okay.
actually, this is a motion to approve the amendment to the article.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that I was voting on the right thing.
Yeah, good point.
Thank you.
It's 89 to 90. I'm
80
sorry, hold on. It's 89 to 91.
Okay, the vote being 89 in the affirmative, 91 in the negative, the motion does not carry. We are now back to the main motion. Is there further discussion?
Yes, we have Ms. Binda.
Ms. Benda.
Thank you, Angela Benda, Precinct 5. Thank you, Julie, and the CPDC for all the work on this. I have a couple questions. The first is, we're talking only about private property here, right? We're not talking about someone who wants to set up something on public government land, right? This is strictly private property.
Ms. Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Ms. Benda, for bringing that up. That's an important clarification. Yes, we are talking only about private property.
Okay. I have a question under 4632. I think it's the second to last paragraph, where it talks about mailing notification of a minor site plan review to abutters. And it says within a 300-foot radius of the site. So I'm trying to understand what 300 feet radius of the site is. Is that from, if you draw a circle around the property, is it from the edge of that circle to a butter, to people going out? How far does that go? And I'm asking because I do want to make sure it's not just a person putting a porch or a deck on their yard. So any changes or modifications would really, I think, affect more than just abutters. It might affect people or businesses or homeowners a few lots down the way. And I just want to make sure that we don't run into a situation where somebody who might be 2 lots away says, I didn't know anything about it, because the intensity of the possible use could expand beyond 300 feet. For example, the restaurant on Main Street, Fusili's, if they decided to expand into their parking lot, it could affect more than just the abutters. So I would hope, I don't know how far 300 feet goes. I don't know if that's standard or if that might need to be expanded. So I'm asking you just where that figure came from.
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Yes, thank you, Ms. Binda. The 300-foot radius is directly from the zoning statute, Chapter 40A. It's the typical radius required for notification for most other types of applications that the Community Planning and Development Commission reviews. As I mentioned earlier, minor site plan review, just like site plan review, is non-statutory and is not tied to the 40A statute in that way. But to be consistent, and as is past practice with minor site plan reviews, we've notified the same radius of abutters. That's the minimum notification that we give. And then in the case of the outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage applications, we also do email and provide other notification to business tenants within that radius, so that it's not just property owners that are being notified.
Okay, but what about something like Fusiliers? And I have no idea that, I'm just giving this as an example, but what if they wanted to expand outdoor dining? How far would the 300 feet go? Would it go just to an abutter? Would it go 2 houses down? Does it seem like when you're altering outdoor space in this manner and really changing the use possibly for outdoor space, that is sufficient, that is sufficient distance away for the possible intensity of use? Was there discussion on that, or was it just 300 is what we generally do? Was there a discussion on the intensity of use that could?
Ms. Mercier?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you again, Ms. Binda. And I didn't clarify your earlier question about how the 300-foot radius is determined. And so it is taken from the edge of the property line. So it's 300 feet from each property line. There was discussion about whether it was enough, but it is our standard notification. Something that we're doing in addition is looking to see, like I mentioned earlier, whether it might be warranted to notify additional businesses like further away. And so that's why in this language here, it's 100-foot radius at a minimum. Hello? I had another thought, but I've forgotten it. So I apologize. I might remember and then you can come back to me.
Okay, so I'm not going to propose a change here, but if anybody else feels like this is important or this isn't sufficient, then I will leave it to somebody else to propose. And I just have one last question, and that's on the top of page 10. Consideration for how the area is used throughout the day and at night. So I hadn't even thought of expanding into a parking lot. So I did appreciate all of those clarifications on how this could be used. But it does say accommodations for the needs of neighboring uses. So all of that would be taken into consideration, that if somebody was expanding dining into a parking lot, that it could be impacting parking of neighboring businesses. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, we do have a question from the PAC, but before that, I noticed something in the chat. Town council alerted that we should make a friendly amendment. Is that true, Ms. Mercier? Okay, I'll call on you.
Yes, that's true. So I misspoke earlier when I said that decision of approval should be capitalized. So it was in, I believe, yeah, right there. So it's actually referred to in the zoning bylaw amendment, but it's not capitalized. So to be consistent, we should not capitalize.
Okay, unless there's any opposition, we will just take that as part of the original main motion. It seems very small. Are there any objections to that? None.
Seeing none.
Seeing none. Okay, now we can go to the PAC. Okay, you can call on.
Go ahead, Mr. Stephen. Stephen, is your mic unmuted? Mr. Crook.
Hear me?
Yep. It's a little hard, but yes.
I think so the speaker, is
I
the
can-
speaker mic on?
Speaker mic should be on.
Okay.
Can anybody hear me?
Yes, we can.
I'm not sure if anybody can hear me, so.
Yes,
you'll
we
have
can
to
hear
get some
you.
Feedback for me.
Tell Mr. Crook, tell him we can hear him.
Say that again? Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Martin. This is Bernie Horn, Precinct 1. Just I have a few questions. The first is that it seems like in 4.631, the CBDC and the Community Development Director kind of seem to be able to grant unilaterally these permissions, in this article. What is the due process that if for some reason the CBDC or Community Development Director makes a decision and there's some objection to this, what due process is there for the abutters or community at large in order to challenge that? Is that the other statutes in the zoning area, or does this supersede any rights in those zoning laws?
Ms. Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you for the question, Mr. Horn. Section 4610, which is here within the site plan section, outlines a process for any aggrieved party to appeal a decision of the CPDC.
Documentation?
You have further questions, Mr. Horn?
Yeah. So the other question is whether there is an expiration to these changes. So it seems that in the case of the changes, we're expanding from loading zones to a number of other uses. So let's suppose that a landowner decides to expand, eliminate parking, expand up to the limits of the lot, and the CPDC and Community Development Director decide that that's okay. Is that a permanent override of the other zoning requirements? And if so, can this statute be stated so that there's an expiration of these revisions such that it would revert back to, the normal zoning requirements in these cases?
Ms. Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mr. Horn. So the intention of this bylaw is to outlast the pandemic and continue to provide a mechanism for, outdoor commerce, dining, programming, and storage into the future. The great expectation is that these applications will be seasonal, they'll be limited in scope and scale and time frame. And if they are approved into the future, it will be maybe April to October each year. Maybe it'll be certain days of the week, certain hours, and any other time that it's not functioning that the outdoor commerce, dining, programming, or storage is not functioning as an accessory use on the site will be restored to its normal prior condition.
There's a terrible echo in the pack here. Sorry, I didn't get all of that, but I guess I would propose potentially an amendment which would state that these minor site plan review approvals would expire, let's say, annually, and therefore have to be reapplied in the event that something unintended goes wrong with the approval process or the use that was originally intended.
Are you planning to?
I'd just like to get your.
We'll get Ms. Mercier's response first. Ms. Mercier.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So to that point, we actually do have a clause at the, let me just see what section it's in. Section 463. Wait, hold on. Oh yeah, no, section 4634, compliance with decision of approval. So just keep scrolling down a bit, Bob, please. Thank you. A little bit more. Yeah, right there at the top of the screen. So this is to deal with issues of ongoing non-compliance or issues that arise after an approval when a site is functioning. And so if there are ongoing problems, the applicant will need to come to the staff with some solutions, and then also we need to return to CPDC to address these concerns and these issues. And if it's something that just is unresolvable, the CPDC could rescind the permit. I would strongly caution against having these expire every year.
Although if, you know, if for some reason the CPDC or the community development director allowed a certain use that became untenable to the local, to the community or the abutters, this would continue on and there would be no resolution of that among the town. So, you know, I guess what I'd like to propose is an amendment that says, you know, these temporary measures,
Can you give us the exact wording and where you want to put it?
You know, shall expire annually, shall expire annually and must be reapproved at that time. Would you on that?
So, Bob, do we have that exact wording and do we know where it's going?
Alan, I wasn't sure where it belonged.
Okay, Mr. Horn, where do you propose putting this?
I propose to put it in 4633. Such waivers shall expire annually. Shall expire annually. Let's just try it that.
Okay. Okay, is there a second to that? Second. Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. Moderator, we're going to make sure that everybody who has their hand raised right now wishes to speak on the amendment.
Oh, right. If you wanted to speak on the main motion, please lower your hand. And we're moved to just the amendment right now.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right, we have Heather Klisch.
Heather Klisch, okay.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Moderator. Heather Klisch, Precinct 7.
I'm sorry, Mr. Klisch, I can barely hear you. Can anybody else hear?
No, here, I'll just speak up.
Oh, there you are. That's better.
I'm Heather Klisch, Precinct 7. I'm also on CPDC. And I would also suggest, I think as Julie did, that with the process that we have in the overall bylaw to express grievance, and the language that we have about the compliance with the decision for approval, I personally would be loath to have each permit expire every year. I'm thinking about the operations, the businesses that might be doing just fine, and creating this barrier to come back and get in line and get onto a CPDC agenda, talk to Julie, go through that whole process every year, I fear could become cumbersome in itself in a way that we really don't intend. I at least don't personally.
Okay. Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
We have Mr. Barry Berman.
Mr. Berman.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Barry Berman, Precinct 4. I'm opposed to this amendment pretty strongly. The whole purpose and point, and Julie, thanks so much to your staff and CPTC for putting this together. The whole point of the zoning amendment is to make it easier, not harder, for businesses to operate and to extend their selling season. Our businesses have been crushed, and the whole point of this is to make it easier. The minor site review is quicker, it's cheaper. And again, to just make these people go and do it every year when it's not broken, I just think is sort of an anathema to the whole reason why we're even doing this in the first place. I mean, and the other thing too, I'm sure people have seen this. It's really exciting that, the Chamber of Commerce got a grant, $25,000 grant from Office of Travel and Tourism to help promote shopping in the Reddings. And this zoning amendment is going to help that. And so anything that any kind of barrier to make it harder, I'm opposed to, and I encourage people to not vote for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. Mon.
Mr. Mon.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jamie Mon, Precinct 4, and I agree with the previous speakers. It would be contrary to everything else we do as a town. Can you imagine if every site plan review we did had to be renewed every year? We would be backed up for the next decade. Once we approve something, we use our best judgment. It's approved, and there is a provision. If it doesn't work as expected, it can be withdrawn. And also, where that amendment is placed only applies to the waiver of parking. It doesn't actually apply to the whole minor site plan review. So it's in the wrong place, and it is contrary to the purpose of the whole amendment. So I oppose this.
Further discussion on the proposed amendment?
Mr. Herrick.
Mr. Herrick.
Yeah, so, this is very interesting. So I originally had my hand up to talk about a couple of things, some of which have already been hit upon, but one of them, my questions was going to be how open-ended these approvals were. And it did raise some concern with me that does this approval, does it become like part of the landscape that once something's been approved through this relatively, I'm not gonna say it's necessarily an easy process, but we've kind of lowered the bar here in terms of what we're asking people to do to make these changes. I do think that there's the town has an interest in making sure that these things are not just open-ended and that it's part of it forever. In other words, what wasn't clear to me was does one of these MSPRs transfer from one, say, business owner to the next business owner? If the business changes hands, does that happen? So I realize I'm getting outside of the question slightly here, but as far as this, I object to the idea that the waivers would expire annually, but I think that the concept of that they are in fact subject to review. I guess I'd like to know from Julie, what is the concept here? What is the driving motivation behind this? Are these intended to be permanent, or is it only, do these things expire only when somebody objects to them based on the that section of the bylaw?
Ms. Mercier?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Moderator, and thank you, Mr. Herrick. So the intention here is to be flexible and to listen to what businesses want. So some businesses, I already know, only want to just get through the pandemic. They're not intending on conducting their proposal beyond this next year, hopefully. And some businesses are thinking, yeah, this outdoor dining that we've been doing, it worked out great. Like, we would love to continue it into the future if the landlord allows us on the application. And then, we would be looking at maybe an application that would be, I don't know, April to October each year. The CPDC can talk about whether they should grant something for a year if it seems like it's a proposal that might have challenges. It could be granted for a year, it could be granted for 2 years, and then the person would have to come back and renew. It could be granted, for 10 years. It's really not set in stone, I guess. And different businesses have already indicated they want different things.
I'm sorry, Julie. I'll let you finish. Apologize.
No, it's okay. I think I'm just rambling at this point.
It's okay. So I guess the question is, would it be worthwhile, in your opinion, to include some sort of language in here that would potentially put some boundaries around the time frame of these approvals, subject to further review? And I don't know if what I'm proposing here is, so I guess my question is, I don't necessarily agree with the amendment as proposed, but I do believe that there's an opportunity here to insert some sort of language which puts a timing boundary around this, or gives the CPDC some kind of a bylaw-driven authority to correct you know, to periodically check these things to make sure, is this still what we want doing? Oh, is this still doing what we want it to do, without having to say this thing expires in a year and suddenly 30 businesses are coming back asking for their, you know, renewals, and the CPDC has to go jump through these hoops again. So if I'm to stick to the amendment, I recommend against it, but I do believe that there's potentially another amendment that might make sense here. I'm not sure where it goes at the moment.
Okay, further discussion on the proposed amendment.
Mr. Carnahan.
Mr. Carnahan?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moderator. Joe Carnahan, Precinct 6. I'd like to move the previous question, please.
Okay, we have a motion to end debate on the proposed amendment. Is there a second? Second. This requires a 2/3 vote, so I will call for a poll on ending debate. And at the PAC?
0 yes, 1 no.
Okay, 0 yes, 1 no on the PAC.
He just spoke a second ago.
While we're tallying the votes, we have missed who moved the question on that. I did not record your name. Could you tell me? Could you raise your hand? Oh, Mr. Carnahan, right? I'm sorry. Thank you. Okay, how are we doing on the question? Okay. Zero, 1.
So it's 164 to 12.
Vote being 164 to 12 to end debate. Debate has ended. We will now move to a vote on the proposed amendment. Again, I would like a poll. And at the PAC?
1 yes, 0 no.
Thank you.
I'll just close the poll. You'll have to give me the numbers, please. That was, the pack is 1-0.
Okay. Looks like 34 yes, 138 no.
Okay, the vote is that, I'm sorry. Okay, 34 in the affirmative, 138 in the negative. The motion to amend does not carry. We are now back.
Excuse me, moderator, counting the packets, 35 in the affirmative.
35, okay, excuse me. The vote being 35 in the affirmative and 138 in the negative, the motion does not carry. Okay, back to the main motion again. Is there further discussion?
We have a point of order from Mr. Beckwith in the
Mr.
chat.
Beckwith? Your point of order, Mr. Beckwith?
Oh, you got to raise your hand, Mr. Beckwith, so I can find you and let you speak. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Jeff Beckwith, Precinct 6. I believe that the motion was on moving the previous question, which would have us move to actually the main motion, as opposed to having further debate.
Well, we moved the previous question 164 to 12, which made us go to the vote on the proposed amendment. And the proposed amendment failed 35 to 138. So we now return to the main motion. The motion to end debate was strictly on the amendment.
Okay, I guess that's my misunderstanding, Mr. Moderator, because I believe that moving the question is to move the question at hand, moving the previous question moves the previous motion and all further amendments.
Well, that is true if it's not specified, but in this case, it was specified to end debate on the amendment. So in this case, we just ended debate on amendment and then we voted on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr.
So
Moderator.
now we're back to the main motion. Further discussion on the main motion? I think we have a few.
We do. We have Mr. Cool first.
Mr. Cool?
Nope, Mr. Cool lowered his hand. We're going to go to Mr. Ventura.
Mr. Ventura.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh.
Sorry, I was muted.
No problem.
I'd like to motion to move forward and debate.
On the main motion?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. We have a motion to end debate on the main motion. Is there a second? Yes, we do. Okay, there's no debate on this. Again, I will call for a poll. It requires a 2/3 vote to end debate. So when the poll comes up, all those in favor of ending debate, say yes. And all those opposed, say no. And at the PAC?
0 yes, 1 no.
The vote being 146 in the affirmative, 28 in the negative. The question has been moved on the main motion. We will now proceed to a vote on the main motion, which also requires a 2/3 vote. So we will call for another poll. And at the PAC?
0 yes, 1 no.
It's 163 to 12.
Vote being 163 in the affirmative, 12 in the negative. The motion carries. Let me just mark that down. All right. Next, Ms. Herrick had asked that the town meeting move Article 19 up to this point. Is there a second? Second. Okay, is there any discussion on that? If not, we will take a hand count on that. All those in favor of moving Article 19 out of order, please raise your hand. And at the PAC?
1 yes, 0 no.
Okay. All right, and when the hands are lowered, we will ask for the no votes.
Okay.
Okay, and the vote being?
124 to 5. I'm sorry, 125 to 5.
125 to 5. Okay, so Article 19 is now before us. I will call on Ms. Herrick.
Thank you. Go ahead, Ms. Herrick.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Move to indefinitely postpone Article 19. The Select Board has reached an agreement with a property owner that does not involve an appropriation of more than $25,000. Thus, town meeting approval of the settlement is not required. The Select Board intends to share additional details on the matter once advised by Town Council that it is appropriate to do so.
Okay, thank you. We have a point of order from Mr. Ensminger.
Mr. Ensminger, if you can raise your hand, I'll call on you. Go ahead, Mr. Ensminger.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Could the select board provide any kind of detail without transgressing any of the limitations of your executive session about what's going on here with 59 Middlesex?
Do we have a response from Ms. Herrick?
Hold on a moment.
Is that
Go ahead.
really a point of order?
Really a question. Yes, it's a point of order, but it's really a question. Indefinite postponement is debatable. So if you have an answer to that and you would like to make it.
I would just suggest that if the speaker would be so kind as to just bring it up during debate on this article.
Well, we are actually in debate now.
Okay.
Yeah, he made it as a point of order. Really, it's a part of debate.
Okay. So the select board would like to defer to town council on all questions related to this matter. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have town council on board?
Hello,
We
Mr.
do. Go ahead.
Ms. Freed.
Hello, Mr. Moderator. Ivrea Freed, Town Council. So Article 19 sought town meeting approval to authorize the select board to settle all claims related to a federal lawsuit and a Department of Housing and Urban Development Fair Housing Act complaint that had been filed by the property owner of 59 Middlesex Ave against the town. Section 5.2 of the town's bylaw states that town meeting approval is required to settle all claims involving an appropriation of more than $25,000. The select board moved to indefinitely postpone this article because they reached an agreement with the property owner where less than $25,000 of town's funds, exactly $10,000 of town funds, will be used to resolve the matter.
Thank you. Further discussion?
We have Ms. Perry.
Ms. Perry.
Sorry, I did that in error.
Did that in error? Okay, no problem. Further discussion?
We have Thomas Perry.
Thomas Perry. Okay. Mr. Perry?
I actually didn't press anything.
Oh,
Sorry about
Your
that.
hands up.
Okay, further discussion.
We have Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brown, we can't hear you.
Mr. Brown? Yes.
He's unmuted, but he's
He's unmuted. Mr. Brown, can you talk? You are unmuted. I am sorry, we are not hearing you. All right, we'll move on and maybe he'll come back on again.
Mr. Ensminger.
Mr. Ensminger.
That's all I had, I guess.
Okay.
Okay. Further discussion.
All we have is Ms. Herrick.
Ms. Herrick?
Excuse me, that was technical difficulty. I'm
Oh, okay. Getting late. Okay, then are we ready for the vote?
We have Mr. Ventura.
Oh, Mr. Ventura. Okay.
Hi, Mark Ventura, Precinct 2. Just curious, why did we settle? Were we in fault or just not worth the argument?
Ms. Herrick? Oh, right. Ms. Freed, excuse me.
Mr. Moderator, Ivrea Freed, Town Council. The town admitted no liability. That was stated clearly in the settlement. The select board decided that they, in balancing the cost of litigation and the consequences of any potential negative finding by HUD, that resolving the matter as expeditiously as possible would be appropriate, but there was no liability on part of the town.
All right, Mr. Horn.
Thank you, Bernie Horn, Precinct 1. Would the town council kindly describe any and all other concessions or agreements that were made with the other party in order to settle this disagreement?
Ms. Freed?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. The select board intends to release a statement on this matter later this week. So we would like to direct the public to that statement. But briefly, the settlement agreement did involve an agreed upon set of reasonable accommodations for the operator to obtain a certificate of occupancy for the property. And there was an insurance payment of $100,000 as well.
Would the property, has the town select board in any way allowed the property owner to expand or otherwise, add to the structure or the units on the property?
Ms. Freed?
No.
Okay, further discussion? Ms. Williams?
Hi there, I have Bill Brown. Is that gonna work?
It's a little echoey, but yeah, we'll try it.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Bill. No, it's not gonna work. Nope, sorry, we tried.
Okay, could he relay the question to you maybe?
No, he hung up.
Oh, okay. All right. Further discussion? Ms. Downing?
Hi, yes, thank you. Am I unmuted now?
Yeah, you're
Okay.
fine now, yeah.
Yep, just further to what the town council answered, who is paying the $100K insurance? And why isn't town meeting being asked to approve or not approve that?
So, sorry, Mr. Moderator, Ivrea Freed,
Ms.
Town
Freed,
Council.
yes. Yeah.
So the $100,000 is being paid by the town's insurance, Maya. Town meeting approval is not required under section 5.2 of the bylaw. It just relates to when town funds, not insurance council funds, are being utilized for a settlement.
So this is a payment of a claim by our town insurance carrier.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, are we ready for the vote? The vote before us is to move for indefinite postponement. Could we have a poll? Okay, let's see, article moves, yes, right, okay. And while you're voting at the pack, the numbers?
1 yes, 0 no.
$164 to 11.
The vote being 164 in the affirmative, 11 in the negative. The motion to indefinitely postpone the substance of Article 19 has carried. Has been indefinitely postponed. All right, that brings us back to Article 5. We do have a couple of hands up there. Is that left over or is that new? So we'll call on them to see. Oh, okay.
Are you muted?
Mr. Brown, go ahead, Mr. Brown. Let's try one more time. It worked in practice. It's not working now.
It's not working. Okay. We have a couple of other hands up.
Yeah, Sheila Reichart.
Ms. Reichart?
She lowered her hand.
She lowered her hand. Okay. Do we
have Mr. Ensminger?
Mr. Ensminger.
Mr. Moderator, move to adjourn.
Okay, moves to adjourn until Thursday evening, I assume? Yes? Okay, is there a second? Second. This only requires a majority, but and there's no debate. So again, I'd like a poll put up. All those in favor of adjournment until 7:30 on Thursday evening, please say yes. And while you're voting at the PAC, the vote is?
1 yes, 0 no.
Okay.
Mr. Moderator, we have a poll and some have started to vote, show of hands. Those that voted show of hands, please vote in the poll.
Thank you.
To clear all hands out of the poll.
It says approve the article, but what we're voting on is to adjourn for the evening until Thursday night.
Okay. 152 to 26.
Was it 152 to 26? Yes, okay. Does that include the PAC?
That includes the PAC.
Okay, 152 to 26 to adjourn. So this town meeting stands adjourned until Thursday evening at 7:30.